Story 1. My wife's coworker bought her a special gift that proved their affair. I got them both fired from the hospital and kicked her out. Hey there, guys. I'm going to need some advice on a situation I'm going through in my marriage. I, 29M, have been married to my wife, 30F, for 7 years, and we have a daughter who is 5 years old. Depending on who you ask, some would say that we got married young. I know I heard a lot of that while we planned the wedding. The thing is, we have known each other since late in high school, so I feel like we had enough time to get to know each other to the point where I could confidently propose. We were both relatively mature people for our ages. When we were younger, she knew she wanted to go to medical school, and I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur. This is part of why I felt we were meant for each other. My HVAC business was already doing really well before I turned 20, so by the time she was ready to go to med school, I was able to support her. I suppose our younger selves would be very happy with where we are, well over a decade since we first met. Well, career-wise at least, because some things have happened that make me wonder whether there were some red flags that I happened to miss, or whether people just want what they want regardless of how much you care and how much effort you put in. I've never put a foot wrong when it comes to my wife. We pretty much grew into adulthood side by side, so you can't fault me for thinking that I know her to the fullest. Enough with the yapping, let me try and cut to the chase. As I've said, my wife went to medical school. She did great there, and now she's a general practitioner, which is awesome. I've really never been prouder of anyone because I watched her graduate high school, then graduate from university twice. I will admit that I sometimes feared that I'd feel inferior with a high-achieving wife, but I'm doing fantastic for myself. I didn't go to college, but that was because I knew it would be a waste of my time. Instead, I used those same 4 years to apply the throttle on some new enterprises I was trying to start, like a detailing business, and my hard work paid off. So yeah, I make a lot, and that surely helps me feel good about myself. Do I regret not going to college? Even now, nope. So, my wife, the doctor, obviously she works at a hospital. As expected, she has colleagues whom she's friends with and some whom she steps away from being enemies with. Typical workplace drama, whether you work in a retail store or a tech company. The thing is, it became a bit disconcerting to me when a certain name started to pop up a lot more than the other coworkers that I heard about quite often. Let's call the guy Devin. If you've ever heard of the stupid concept of work husbands, that's what Devin started to sound like to me. Anytime something happens at work while she is at lunch, she always happens to be eating lunch with Devin. She's scared of walking to her car when leaving work late at night. Who was there to save the day and accompany her? Devin, of course. There was even a really annoying time when she started to gush about Devin's 2 cats and Chihuahua, which he couldn't stop showing her photos of. At this point, I obviously became very cautious of Devin. I think any man would. After all, it seemed like Devin was interested in her with how much he seemed to be around her. I joked around with her one day with an ulterior motive, asking whether Devin knew she was married. She said he did, and after a brief pause, she reassured me that I didn't need to worry about him one bit, that he's basically her brother. This didn't really convince me, and it was made worse because I hate hearing sentences including the phrase, like a brother to me. But I decided to let it go at that moment because I didn't have anything solid beyond him coming up a lot to base strong suspicions on. Now, before I go into what happens next, I need to give you a little bit of background on the sexual side of my relationship with my wife. I've never been the kind of guy who needs to have sex 5 times a week. Nah, once or twice in 2 weeks fills, or should I say empties, the tank for me. The best part was that this worked perfectly for my wife too. She isn't a high libido kind of woman, so we had a really harmonious sexual life in the early stages of our marriage. Unfortunately, almost out of nowhere, her interest in sex just died. We spoke about it and she blamed hormones, stress, the weather, upcoming exams, her diet, and so on. With each thing we tried to fix, nothing changed. In the end, I never blamed my wife for this, but honestly, even though I could cope with sex just twice a month, it started to become hard on me. I seriously considered looking outside my marriage, but I never came close to acting on such considerations. Now, here's where that comes in. One day, my wife comes home and excitedly tells me that she's interested in us trying to spark up our life in the bedroom again. At this point, it had been about 2 years, and I'd wager that we hadn't had sex more than 5 times in that period. So, of course, I was a bit stunned by her sudden enthusiasm to get things started again. Oh wow. What is making you so eager for us to start trying again? I had to ask because sex almost never seems like something that my wife thinks about unless I bring it up. I had a discussion with some people at work about sex, and it really brought up a lot of things that we might be able to try out to spice things up, was what she responded to me. I'm on guard as she says this because talking about sex should be less awkward or juvenile among doctors than any other group of people, but I've never gotten the idea that she and her coworkers talk about things like that. So I asked her what they talked about and who she talked about these things with. After all, I know most of her coworkers by name. Just Devin and some of the others. Like I said, I know most of her coworkers by name, so for the rest of them to end up relegated to an uncertain the others left me feeling uneasy. I felt like challenging her at that point because I felt like it might have been a personal conversation with Devin, and as she was talking about sex with Devin one-on-one, that would not be in good taste, obviously. No problem, I'm listening, I said. So on she continued, telling me about how the conversation went from how important sex is to sexless marriages to sex toys. Then she let it slip that she used our case as an example in this convo. I mean, I've never been bitter about the whole sexless situation, but it can be very frustrating, so to hear that it's being brought up by her in public conversations with coworkers, by the way, many of whom know me rather well, made me very unhappy with her. However, my wife is a rather private person, so this didn't sound right to me. So this was just you and Devin, then, right? I said this quickly to catch her off guard and watch her reaction. She seemed startled and flustered, but she was quick to deny it. No, it was me and some of the others. Devin was there, though. I looked closely at her, and she tried to maintain my gaze, but her eyes kept darting away. There were probably 5 seconds of silence before I said, "Tell the truth." She said nothing, and this time she just looked down. I actually saw a teardrop fall from her eyes. It was just you and Devin, right? Looking back, this was uncharacteristically relentless of me, but I think all of the Devin stories had me on something of a mean streak. Looking back, I'm glad it came at that moment because I might have let it slide otherwise and ended up musing about it for hours. She squeaked out a yes. "Okay, continue the story then," I said to her. But she didn't say anything because I had caught her in a lie. We just sat there in silence for a very long time, and I was extremely pissed, but I did my best to keep my composure and stay calm. After about 2 minutes of nothing but quiet, she finally apologized. "I'm sorry for lying. I knew it wouldn't be a good look to admit that I had a private conversation of that kind with him alone." She looked at me, but I kept a stone face. "But I swear we just talked. There was nothing else to it. I don't think you did anything unless you're banging in the broom closet at work. But I hate how you're bringing our private life to other people. I especially hate you bringing our private life to Devin of all people." Really, so was it talking to Devin that could potentially break the sexual deadlock we've been sitting through in our marriage? You know what that looks like, right? I swear he's like a brother to me. I've always said it, and I hate that you don't believe me. There's nothing between us, and talking to him about it was just like talking to a friend or even like talking to a therapist or something. So at this point, I realized I was shaking with rage because I could tell that my wife was slowly trying to turn this thing against me. Suddenly, she was about to be the victim. I've had this thing happen during arguments with her, but before then, it had never been with something that pissed me off so much. So I told her, "Before you turn yourself into the victim here, it's fine. Keep having your sexual conversations with Devin, the brother who you have such deep interactions with. I'm actually interested in seeing how this unofficial sex therapist can help us out in the bedroom." And with that, I stood up and left the room. I slept on the couch that day. Now I'm going to need to fast forward about a week. The next 2 days were a bit awkward, but we eventually got past it, and I didn't hear anything about Devin, which for me worked out beautifully. I knew she'd still be interacting with him since they worked together, but at least I didn't need to keep hearing about him, and that was enough for me. At least in that moment, I thought that things were fine and we were about to have things go back to normal until a week had passed from the day we had our big argument. So, a week from the big argument was yesterday. My wife came back home at night holding a plastic bag that I could tell had a long box in it. She seemed very apprehensive, but I could tell she was doing her best not to act too differently. This went on for probably about 30 minutes while she tried to make normal conversation, and I started to get impatient. But eventually, She sat down next to me in the way she does when a serious conversation was about to be had. So, babe, remember what we talked about trying to get our bedroom life active again? I nodded. I decided to take a leap and get something that I thought might help us a lot in the bedroom, or help me, because I know I'm the issue. And then she pulled the box out of the plastic bag. It did not come in discreet packaging, so it was very clear it was a dildo. A big one. It was purple, and the graphics on the box made it obvious that the thing could vibrate. I'm not opposed to toys, to be honest. I think they can help out a lot more than they can harm the bedroom experience, at least when used tastefully. But my wife has always been vanilla, so this move was a bit of a shock to me. Then again, she claimed she had such an enlightening conversation about intercourse with Devin. Obviously, my mind went back to that very annoying night, but I did my best to keep my emotions in check. My wife pulled the ridiculous purple plastic penis out of the box and held it as if it was made of glass. I kind of just looked at it because I had never needed to use toys in my previous relationships. My anatomy did the job well enough, but I understand how different everyone is, so some people like my wife need more motivation. I tried not to make the situation too awkward, since it seemed like she didn't know what to say either, so all I could mutter was, "Why do they have to make them so colorful?" She seemed relieved that I said something, and I think that relief was what made her slip up. I remember it exactly as she said it. "I know, right? I don't know why Devin chose the color. Something closer to a skin tone would have been nicer." She had a smile on her face and she just kept looking at the stupid thing, but I could hear my blood pulsing through my ears. It almost seemed like she didn't realize what she had just admitted to. Now at this moment, I couldn't figure out whether I wanted to erupt at her or just keep what she had just said close to my chest, since she was unaware of the bombshell she had dropped. Being discreet wasn't possible though, because I felt like my head was going to pop. "Devin bought you a dildo?" Came out a whole lot louder than I expected it to. She looked shocked and confused at first, and then I assumed she played back the last minute in her mind, realized what she had let slip, and then her eyes widened in fright. I stood up, and I shook my head over and over, searching through my head for the right words to say to her. "How does the person you claim as like a brother to you end up having deep sexual conversations with you and buying you toys?" It was hard for me to grasp. She said something which I couldn't hear, and I calmly asked her to repeat it. I was hoping that there was some kind of explanation or some kind of misunderstanding, but nope. What she said was, "I was going to buy one for us anyway, so it saved us some cash." There's a reason why it came out in a whisper, and that was because she knew how idiotic it sounded. I didn't even bother saying anything to that because she was in the phase of an argument where she senselessly tried to justify her actions. I've never felt worse at any recent point in my life than I did yesterday. I felt like there was a lot of aggression and negative energy that I needed to let loose, but I simply couldn't do that in any socially acceptable way. I wanted to interrogate her about Devin, but I knew she'd deny everything, especially with the way I was shaking with fury. So I just grabbed my car keys and my wallet and left the house. She gently tried to stop me once, but I glared at her, and she backed off. I drove around town for hours in the night, and it helped to clear my head. I got a hotel room yesterday night and extended my stay for tonight as well. I'm not certain whether I'll be going home tomorrow, but I decided to see if I can get some advice from all of you here. I have a strong feeling that she and Devin are sleeping together, but I want solid proof. Let me know what you all think. I'll stick around in the comments for as long as I can. Edit. You guys don't need to convince me that she and Devin have some kind of thing going on. I'm not in denial. I just want to make sure that I have evidence in a way that is absolutely undeniable. It'll help me in more ways than one. Edit 2. Yeah, I probably should have kicked her out of the house instead of leaving myself, but I really couldn't be around her for as long as it would have taken her to pack a suitcase, so I think it was better I took myself out. Edit 3. I saw a few suggestions that I'd check her phone, and I'm probably going to do that, but if I'm going to do that, it can't be right away because she's still on guard. However, a lot of your comments gave me ideas, so I think I'm going to see if I can get in contact with her coworkers that I'm friendliest with. Could backfire, especially if they are more loyal to her than me, but let's see. Update. Hey ladies and gents, it's been a while, but I had to be really patient. I hope that you all were too. I have an update, And while that might be great news for all of you since it provides a very compelling continuation to my ordeal, it is very bittersweet for me. After about a week, I went back home. My wife apologized over and over and said she'd limit her interactions with Devin, and I just nodded and nodded. I certainly wasn't over the situation, but I knew that I needed to be at home and on good terms with her to be able to learn the true extent of her relationship with Devin. It took an excessive amount of time for us to start to be friendly with one another again. I made the risky decision to reach out to two of my wife's coworkers who knew me and who I felt would be the least likely to snitch on me. One was a guy that we'll call Rob, and the other is a lady we'll call Anna. I started with Rob because I hoped that since we're both men, he'd feel a degree of loyalty towards me and tell me the hard truth. I didn't have his phone number, and I couldn't show up at her workplace, but he was easy to find online. Shout out to LinkedIn for hooking me up. I sent him a message, explained who I was and how he knew me, and then we arranged to meet up at a bar for a few drinks. When we got there, I didn't jump straight into Devin talk because Devin is a coworker of his at the end of the day. But I simply mentioned that I felt some kind of way about the Devin dude and I'd like to know what he had observed between the two of them. Rob seemed to silently calculate how much he wanted to tell me but eventually let me know that my wife and Devin were extremely close. He had no evidence that they had anything beyond being extremely close work friends, but he approved of my suspicion because he sort of felt the same way even as a spectator. I thanked Rob for his help. Next up was Anna. Women tend to be a lot more privy to workplace gossip, but that was the exact reason why my meeting up with her to discuss two of her coworkers could be extremely risky. I felt like there was very little to lose, though, so I went for it. It was the next day when I met up with her in a public space. Anna was a rather pretty woman, so it made sense why she was one of the colleagues my wife usually complained about. It was probably just that girl-on-girl competitiveness we all know. My hope was that if my wife didn't like Anna and Anna probably didn't like my wife, then she'd help me out. Your wife and Devin. She had a pained expression on her face as she said that. I don't know how much you know, but there's definitely something going on between the two of them. I really hate to be the bearer of bad news, but the buzz at the hospital is that they've been getting into it at work, for lack of a gentler way for me to say it. As Anna said that, I knew I was angry, but I also felt a sense of closure because I had finally been proven right. I wasn't crazy for thinking there was something between my wife and Devin, so I thanked Anna profusely and went back home that night. As my wife slept, I grabbed her phone and went straight for her messages. Her chat with Devin wasn't hard to find, and I scrolled and scrolled and scrolled, but it was clean. In fact, it was a bit too clean for my liking. There was no talk about the toy. There was nothing even close to inappropriate in there. I even jumped into her email and some of the social media apps she uses the most, but there really wasn't anything to convince me that my wife had anything else going on with him. I started to feel crazy, like I might actually have blown the whole thing out of proportion. Well, that was all before I went through her gallery app. Initially, I didn't see anything of note. There were selfies, the sky and clouds on her drives home, food she'd eaten recently, and other boring things. At that moment, I felt like I had judged her very harshly, and just on a whim, I decided to check the trash folder on the phone. A literal sex tape. It had been deleted a few days back, but there was an actual sex tape in her trash with what was clearly my wife in scrubs being railed from behind by another guy in a similar outfit. The environment seemed like some kind of room in a hospital, which would make sense. Their work romance was strictly a work romance, but it went as far as intercourse on the premises. I was furious. I had to watch an entire 5-minute video of my wife having sex with another man. I had really hoped that I would find nothing and my life would go back to normal, but that was the best outcome for a fool who wants to be blissfully ignorant, and that's never been me. So I sent the video over to my phone, removed any evidence that I had touched her phone, and stayed up the rest of the night coming up with a plan of action. I had the proof I needed, and all that was left was to make perfect use of it. In the morning, my wife went off to work, and I said bye to her, acting as normal as I could. As soon as she left, I brought out her suitcases and began packing her things. We've lived together for a very long time, so it was impossible for me to pack every single thing she owns in a relatively short amount of time, but I made sure to get most of her essentials. I aligned the 3 suitcases I had filled neatly by the door to our house. After that, I went to my laptop, I drafted a very long email to the hospital she worked at, citing my concern that employees at their facility were having sexual relations on the property. I talked about a lack of professionalism, ethical considerations, and sanitary concerns, as it looked like they did their business in an unoccupied patient room. I've been running my own businesses for years now, so I knew the right words to use to get the hospital very concerned about what was going on. I was even tempted to send the video to her family members, but I recognized early enough that would have been a step too far. I'd let them know what I found out, though, once my soon-to-be ex-wife was made aware herself. It took a lot of waiting, but night finally came, and my wife arrived back at home. She walked into the house with a smile on her face, but it instantly dissolved as she saw her suitcases lined up by the door. I don't regret it, and it was an a-hole move, but I couldn't help but say, "Surprise!" Looking back, I'm glad that I gave in to that impulse. "What's going on?" She was in an instant panic, and I just looked at her. I asked her what she thought was going on, and all she could say was, "What did I do?" "You know what you did. You're gonna have to leave right now. You can come another time to get the rest of your stuff, but not right now." She was dumbfounded, and I could see tears beginning to well up in her eyes. "Save me the waterworks and go. I'm sure you'll have a cozy bed to sleep on back at Devon's place. So go there, though you might not be used to having sex with him outside of work." At this point, she had started crying, and I had not a drop of pity in me. In fact, it was irritating to watch. So I walked towards the doorway where she was, picked up 2 of her suitcases, and took them to her car. I came back, met her standing there still bawling her eyes out, and took the last one. By the time I came back, she was standing on the outside of the doorway, and I unceremoniously closed the door behind her. It took almost 30 minutes, but I finally heard her car start up and drive away. She didn't need to know how I had found out, but she couldn't play dumb when she knew I knew. Not too long after, I got a response from the hospital that the concerned individuals are no longer in our employ and were terminated based on a breach of medical ethics and professionalism. Both Devon and my soon-to-be ex-wife taken down in one fell swoop. Very satisfying. I've also started working with a really excellent divorce lawyer who told me it was great I saved the evidence I had found, as painful as it might have been to watch. I added all her family members to a group, let them know what I had found out about their sweet, high-achieving doctor, and left the group. I'm too busy to deal with all that drama, so everyone, that's it. She'll be my ex-wife hopefully very soon, and as much as it hurts to have spent so many years of my life on something that ended up being so flimsy, I'm glad it ended sooner than later. I appreciate you all for supporting me on my initial post and sticking around for this eventual update. Have a nice life, everyone, because I know I'll be doing my damn best to do that. Now on to the next story. Story 2. Mom and sister told everyone that I stole charity money to cover up their own theft, so I cut them off for good. But 6 years later, they want my help with their new business. Hey, so my estranged family reached out to me recently after 6 years of no contact, and I set forth a condition that they don't really agree with. So now I want to know if I'm in the wrong here. For context, when I say family, I'm just referring to my mom and my younger sister. I am 28F and my sister is 24F, and she has always been pretty spoiled and got away with everything as a kid. My dad was a bit of a disciplinarian with both of us, but my mother could never bring herself to say anything to my sister. It's not that my mom treated me badly, but there was a clear favorite. Then, when I was in my second year of college, my dad passed away from an aneurysm. It was very sudden, and we found it very difficult to go with it as a family, but we tried. My dad's passing really brought us together, so my mom's behavior later on was all the more disappointing. My sister was just 16 when our father passed away, and it was obvious that it had really shaken her up. She started acting out in very strange ways, and we had to get her to talk to a psychiatrist because something was obviously going very wrong. Our family was pretty easygoing, and we had never given her a reason to rebel against us. But even then, after our father's death, she started crossing all the lines. She would stay out late every other day without telling my mother anything about her whereabouts. She had started drinking and smoking, and even though she never confirmed it, we were pretty sure that she was taking drugs. She got mixed up with the wrong crowd, essentially. In order to bring that under control, my mom had to step up and start going against her darling golden child. For a while, she really did. She tried her best to control my sister. She cut off her pocket money so she couldn't go out on her own. But that didn't seem to make a difference. She threatened to ground her, but even that did not seem to faze her, and she was way beyond these petty punishments. It was not until my mom said that she would turn all of them into the cops that they really started fighting. Pot has not been decriminalized in our state yet, so they could get into a lot of trouble for it, even if we put aside underage drinking and smoking. Even by just threatening my sister, my mom was seriously scaring her, so she was not happy about it. But eventually, my sister had to follow what my mom was telling her and quit everything, even hanging out with those friends that she used to. My mom forced her to start hanging out more with her old friends so she could come back on track and work towards the future. The last time that I saw my family in person was 6 years ago. I had gone back home for a couple of days to spend some time with them. My sister's school, my old high school, was hosting a bake sale to raise funds for some charitable cause that I don't really remember anymore. All I remember is that my mother had forced my sister to actively take part in it, and my sister was part of the planning committee. My mother and I also baked a bunch of cookies and set up a stall to contribute in our own little way and just be there for my sister. I thought I was doing a good thing. I had no idea what was about to come later. After the event was over, I had plans with a couple of friends to go out for a movie, so I left quickly, and it was just my mother and my sister who stayed back at school that day. When I came back home after the movies, nobody said anything to me, and everything was pretty normal. The next day, I went back to college like I was supposed to. It was then that I had some time and I finally started realizing that a bunch of people from my high school had unfollowed me on Instagram. I had never had any issues with these people, and I was even friends with some of them back when I was in high school, so I had no idea why this was happening. And after racking my brains for a couple of days, I decided to ask one of them what was going on and why they had unfollowed me. When I sent them that message, they replied to me saying that after everything I had done, I should just be glad that people hadn't started blocking me yet. That made no sense to me because as far as I was concerned, I had done absolutely nothing. I tried to ask them what they were talking about, but they did not reply to me after that. So I spoke to a couple of people that I was actually still friends with from high school, but they were so far removed from the situation that they had no idea either. Just like me, they hadn't particularly kept in touch with anyone from our year, and I guess that was good for me in a way that the news that was doing the rounds back home did not reach them. Eventually, after not being able to make sense of what was going on, I decided to speak to my mom and tell her what was happening, and even though I had not thought that she would be able to tell me the truth, she was actually the one who finally explained what was going on. By then, almost 1 month had passed since the bake sale, and when I told my mother about how everyone was behaving with me, she told me that she had to come clean to me about everything. So that was when she finally told me that since my sister had been on the committee, she had also stayed back with everyone else to count the money that they had made. And I guess when nobody was looking, she had swiped almost $2,000. And it was quite a huge amount, so obviously people started noticing. They kept calculating and recalculating again and again until they had to come to the unpleasant conclusion that somebody had stolen the money. Everyone obviously first started suspecting my sister, but nobody really said anything. My mother had also figured out what was going on, so she decided to save my sister and throw me under the bus instead. She cooked up a story on the spot and said that I must have taken money while she was not looking and left as quickly as I could because I had apparently become very irresponsible with money due to my drinking problem, and since my mother had refused to keep sending money, I had decided to take it for myself and leave. She claimed that she had thrown me under the bus to save my sister's bright future. Apparently, I had already moved out for college and only came back home for a couple of days every month, so it was not like it made a difference to me what they thought of me. But my sister still had to live with these people, and if they found out that she was the one who had swiped money that was supposed to go to charity, they would never let her live it down. So she had to do some quick thinking, and that's the plan that she came up with. She even gave up $2,000 out of her own pocket on the spot so that they could end that discussion and nobody would find out what my sister had done. My mother also begged everyone to keep their mouths shut and not talk about my drinking problem because I was still trying to deal with it, and she really didn't want people to know that I had become this desperate that I was ready to steal money that was supposed to go to charity. But obviously, people did not keep their mouths shut about it, and I knew for a fact that one of the people who were in the same year as me also had a sister, and she had been on the committee as well, so she probably heard all of this and passed that information on to her sibling who then told everyone else about it. And people were not exactly mad about the fact that I had a drinking problem, but it was a bit hypocritical of me since when I was in high school I was a bit of a goody two-shoes and I never smoked, drank, or did anything that could be classified as wrong or unethical. I guess everyone was mad about the fact that even after acting that way in high school, it was still not above me to develop a drinking problem as soon as I went away to college and even started stealing to support my habit. This lie that my mother had told to protect my sister had completely shattered my reputation, but she did not seem to care about it. She believed that since I did not live with them anymore, it should not matter to me, but it did. People who used to know me now thought that I was a thief and a drunkard, and I could still deal with the fact that they thought I was an alcoholic, but I couldn't tolerate the fact that they believed that I was a thief because of what my mother had said. I was very upset with her, and I told her that she needed to tell people the truth, but she refused. And on top of that, she even told me that I was not allowed to tell people the truth either, because that would ruin my sister's reputation, and she had worked very hard to bring my sister back to normal. She could not risk it because she did not want my sister to go back to her old habits since that would destroy her future. Apparently, the only reason my sister had even swiped that money was because she wanted to go out with her friends, and since her mother was not giving her any money anymore, she had to take these measures herself. But after they came back home from the bake sale that day, my mother apparently told my sister that this was the last time she was bailing her out, and if she put another toe out of line, then my mother would not hesitate to turn her in, and then she would really be on her own. I guess my sister had not expected to get caught during the recount of the money, and that incident gave her a bit of a reality check, so she decided to turn over a new leaf. Or maybe she didn't. I don't really know since I haven't exactly been in touch with them. Anyway, my mother and I had a huge argument about what should be done because I did not like the fact that she had thrown me under the bus for no reason, but she believed that I did not matter because the only consequences that I would have to face were that a couple of random people who were not even relevant in my life anymore had unfollowed me on social media. But if the truth came to light, my sister's reputation and her bright future would go nowhere. I was about to graduate from a great college, so my life was sorted, and the least I could do for the family was to just keep my mouth shut about it. It was incredibly frustrating, and I just hung up without bothering to say anything to her. For a really long time, I struggled to come to terms with this and thought about whether or not I should reveal the truth to everyone by posting it on Facebook or something, but eventually, I decided against it. However, I also decided not to contact my family anymore until they decided to reach out to me with an elaborate apology because even on the phone, my mother hadn't said that she was sorry. She had just kept insisting that this was the only way out for them and kept trying to defend her decision, but hadn't apologized even once. So I made up my mind that I would not talk to them until I received an apology, and that's how 6 years have passed. I graduated a couple of months after I had that fight with my mom, and even then, the only people who attended my graduation ceremony were my grandparents. I'm close to my dad's parents and his side of the family since my mom's family is from Iowa, and she herself isn't that close to them. After I had told my grandparents what happened with my family, they decided to cut ties with my mom and my sister as well, and eventually the entirety of my dad's side of the family stopped speaking to my mother and by extension my sister as well, since she never bothered to reach out to anyone. So for the past 6 years, I've had no contact with them. I don't know what they have been up to, and neither was I interested because they made it very obvious that they did not care about me, so why should I? Anyway, this was the case until about 6 days ago. It was then that my mom and my sister finally reached out to me once again, and even now it's to ask for my help. They sent me an email since they did not know my address or my new phone number, but I haven't changed my email address, so that's where they found me, and they told me that they were apparently starting a new business. My mother had been a real estate agent and my sister had followed in her footsteps. Now they wanted to start their own real estate business, and they needed my funds because they had heard from a couple of people that I was doing really well. They didn't hear wrong. I am actually doing pretty well. I am the youngest head of a department in my company, and I handle the entire marketing department, so of course I make a decent amount of money, and I can easily help them out with funding. But after 6 years, this was not enough for me, and I decided to call them up on the number that they had provided in the email and set forth a couple of conditions of my own. My mother was very excited to speak to me, and it was surprising that she was acting this way after not speaking to me for almost 6 years, but none of that mattered to me. I was very straightforward with them, and I told them that I would only be interested in their proposal if their apology was as loud as their disrespect. Even in the email, they had only said that they regretted whatever had happened in the past, but they hadn't said that they apologized for it. Their regret meant absolutely nothing to me because I wanted them to post a public apology and acknowledge the lie that my mother had told 6 years back to protect my sister, and only then would I consider coming on board as an investor in their company. I am completely and totally willing to hold up my end of the deal as long as they hold theirs, and I even told them that I was ready to sign any paperwork or contract or whatever, but this was the condition that I would help them out on. I was not about to give them free handouts because I had worked really hard to get where I am today, and for the past 6 years my own mother and sister hadn't bothered to reach out to me until they needed my help, and if they were willing to be so cold-blooded and selfish, then I did not see any reason for me to be a fool. I thought I was being fair, but my mother and my sister have taken a huge issue with what I said. They claim that I am being selfish and I should just let bygones be bygones because, unlike me, they are still living in the same city, and they often see people from my sister's high school around. So if the truth comes out even now, it's going to be much worse because everyone will know that they lied and the repercussions will be just as bad as before, if not worse. My mother still maintains that it makes no difference to me if people continue to believe the lie that they told because I don't live there and I don't have to see these people regularly. So it's different for me, but their life will be ruined. But I told them that that's not my problem and I believe that I'm being completely fair, and I genuinely do think that I'm being fair. To me, it's not about whose life is going to be ruined or whose reputation matters more. It's just about the principle of the thing. They lied about me, and I had to live with it for almost 6 years. Truth be told, it did not matter to me as much as it did back then, but the truth has to come out at some point. There's also the fact that for 6 years they never bothered to apologize to me, so now they really can't expect me to just give them the funds without expecting anything in return, and obviously since they expect money from me, I can't ask them for any other sort of compensation apart from emotional. I'm just trying to strike a deal with them. I don't understand what is so selfish or unreasonable about my demand. Anyway, I just really want to know if everyone else feels the same way about this situation as my mother and my sister do. So, AITA for telling my mom and my sister that I will only invest in their business if they tell everyone the truth about them being thieves. Update 1. Hello everyone. Thank you so much for all the kindness and support that you guys have shown me. It really means a lot to me. I have decided to follow the advice that most people have had for me here. I'm not going to indulge my family anymore, and neither am I going to try to get them to do what I asked them. You guys are right, I don't need to strike any kind of deal with them, and I really should let bygones be bygones because at this point it does not matter to me. I'm doing well in my life, and I hate to say it because I don't mean to brag, but I'm definitely doing better than a lot of the people who believe the lies that my mother told them about me. I don't need to prove anything to anyone, and I definitely don't need to prove that I'm not a thief because I know what I am, and that's enough. I guess I was just trying to bargain with my family because I wanted to hurt them, and I wanted to humiliate them. In the past 6 years, it has never mattered to me what people from high school thought about me, but it always used to hurt that even after screwing me over, my mom and my sister did not think it was important to talk to me or apologize to me. So I guess that's how I was trying to deal with this, trying to get some sense of closure. But obviously, after reading most of the comments on my original post, I realized that it was not worth it. My mother's and my sister's behavior even now has made it very clear that to them, it's not very important what I think or what I feel. All that matters to them is their own feelings, and that is why they haven't bothered to apologize to me even now. I guess I had been holding out some hope that they would have come to their senses by now, but I was wrong, evidently. I'm just a little disappointed and hurt, that's fine, but I've dealt with this for the past 6 years. I can deal with it for longer. So I'm going to send them an email and tell them that I don't want to invest in their business or get involved with them in any capacity at all. And I wish them the best for their life ahead, but I just want them to stay away from me now. Update 2. Hi, so I did it. It's been 10 days since my mother reached out to me again, and last night I finally sent that email after arguing with her about the condition that I had set forth and the fairness of it all and stuff. It took me a while to send that email even after my last update because against all hopes, I was still waiting for them to reach out to me and at least apologize to me in person if they didn't want to acknowledge their mistakes in public and put out the truth. I waited for 3 days, but then I realized that I was just setting myself up for failure once again and just got it over with last night. It was very emotionally draining to even type out that email because I knew that this was probably the last time that I would be interacting with them voluntarily, since the next time that they tried to talk to me, I was not going to entertain it. And there was also the fact that I was finally getting some closure after 6 years, but after I sent that email, I felt very relieved and I decided to tell my grandparents about everything. So far, I had not shared any of this with them, but I felt like it was finally time. I called them up after sending that email and I explained the entire situation to them. I even told them about how I had set a condition for my mom and my sister, but eventually I had decided against getting involved in any capacity. And they actually told me that they were very proud of me for being the bigger person and just letting this go. They said that if I had contributed to their business and gotten involved with my family again because they apologized and acknowledged their mistake on social media, it still wouldn't have repaired anything. As a matter of fact, that would have led to even more bitterness in our relationship, and the only thing that can truly fix our family would be a real apology from my mom and my sister, one that does not need them to be provided with an incentive to apologize and that comes from the heart. Until that, nothing is ever going to be fixed, and as corny as it sounds, they are right about all of this. So I'm pretty happy about my decision, and I'm glad that I decided to come here for advice because it proved to be pretty helpful. A lot of you in the comments had said that I should have just posted the truth on social media 6 years back and said that it was pretty stupid of me to act like such a doormat and never speak my truth. But in all honesty, I just didn't want to screw up my sister's future. No matter what, they are still my family, and just because they haven't been good to me doesn't mean that I to be the same way. Like I said, I've always been a goody two-shoes, and I don't think anything can change that. Anyway, I'm just going to stay out of this now and mind my own business. Update 3. So, a couple of days back, I sent that email to my mother, and she finally replied to it today. She said that she really wanted to meet me, and so did my sister, because obviously, there are a lot of things that we have to talk about. They said that the only reason they haven't been able to come to me so far is because even though they have asked a lot of relatives about where I live now, none of them have responded. They have even asked for my phone number, but even that has not been provided to them, and they really feel like this is something we have to sort out in person. And in this email, my mother finally apologized. She told me that 6 years back, she hadn't been thinking about me, and even now she realizes that she hasn't been thinking about my feelings. She acknowledged the fact that she has been a terrible mother, and not just to me, she has been a terrible mother to my sister as well, because if she had just disciplined her when she should have, the situation wouldn't have gone bad in the first place. My mom said that she had always treated me unfairly because I was the older one, and she expected me to be more understanding to help her shoulder the weight of everything, and she never really let me be who I am. Even for the past 6 years, she had wanted to reach out to me several times, but she just wasn't sure if I wanted to speak to her. She realizes that it's a very feeble excuse, but she was too scared of reaching out to me, and then realizing that I wanted nothing to do with the family anymore. I thought it was a pretty raw email, and it really came through, so I decided to tell her where I live so they could come over and we could try to sort things out. I don't know if I'm doing the right thing, but my gut feeling says that I should give this a chance, and that's what I'm going to do. After my dad's passing, my mom is the only surviving parent that I have, and it's a bit of an irrational fear, but I'm just afraid that if something happens to her, I don't think I will be able to live on with the fact that I never bothered to make things right when I had the chance. My dad was taken from me suddenly and without warning on a random Tuesday while I was still asleep in my college dorm room, and I think about it even now, so if I have the opportunity to make things right with my family, I'm going to try to do that. Update 4. Hey everyone, a lot of people were skeptical about my decision to invite my family home and try to sort things out with them, but I explained why I did that, and now that I've met them, I don't regret it. So a couple of hours ago, my mom and my sister came to my house and I invited them in. I'm not going to sugarcoat things, it was incredibly awkward for the first couple of minutes, but after some small talk, my mom just said, "Who are we kidding?" and gave me a huge hug. I could feel her sobbing while she was hugging me, and she just kept apologizing over and over again. My sister also just sat on the couch and cried silently, and of course, if everyone else was crying, I couldn't hold back my tears either. Both of them said that they were really sorry for how they had treated me during the past 6 years and said that no matter how much they apologized, they would never be able to make up for it, and the fact that I had even bothered to invite them here to clear the air now was a huge deal for them. My sister thanked me for taking the fall for her back then and never exposing the truth, even though I could have done that very easily and it probably would have been more believable for others as well, but I chose not to. I chose to protect her even when both of them had been horrible to me. They said that they wanted to have a fresh start with me and just to demonstrate how serious they were. They said that they didn't even want any investment from me. They would manage on their own because they do not want me to think that I'm only a source of money for them. They just wanted to share the news of their new business with me and had hoped for an investment earlier. But they now realized that they had been selfish. They were the ones who had only thought about themselves, not the other way around. I'm not really sure what led to this awakening, but I'm pretty glad that we had this conversation, and even though there's a long way to go for us, this is a start. We are going to try and keep in touch and try to mend these broken relationships. I have spoken to my grandparents about it as well, and they think that it's a good decision, so I'm glad that I did this. People make mistakes, but the ones who forgive when the time comes make more of a difference. So I'm hoping for the best now, and let's see where this goes. Now on to the next story. Story 3. Sister excluded me from her wedding because my kids might make people uncomfortable. Then suddenly showed up at my door with gifts after 2 years of NC because she's infertile. I 38F, have twin boys 11, who are on the autism spectrum. My husband and I have worked our asses off to create a stable environment for them. They're amazing kids who just need a bit more support and understanding than most. We've dealt with our share of challenges. Meltdowns in grocery stores, that one disaster of a school play, don't ask, and the constant battle with the school district to get proper accommodations. But we figured it out, mostly. I used to be really close with my sister growing up, like finish each other's sentences close. We shared clothes, secrets, everything. She was the first person I called when I found out I was pregnant. I was there for her through every breakup, job crisis, whatever. She was there when my boys were diagnosed, or at least I thought she was. She brought over lasagna and sat with me while I cried. Things started changing when she met her now husband about 5 years ago. He comes from some kind of important family. They're not actually important, just have money and know people. His dad was on the city council years ago or something, and they act like that makes them royalty. My sister gradually started hanging out with his friends and family more, canceling our plans, the usual drift. At first it was just, oh, Josh's mom invited us for dinner. Or, Josh's friends are having a thing. Then it became every weekend. Then every call was about them. The boys noticed. They'd ask about their aunt, why she didn't come over anymore. I made excuses because I didn't want them to feel rejected. I told them she was busy with work or traveling. I hate lying to my kids. But what was I supposed to say? Your aunt doesn't want to deal with you because her new boyfriend thinks you're weird, because that's what it felt like. When they got engaged, I was happy for her. I genuinely was. I sent flowers and a card and all that crap. I asked her if she wanted me to help with wedding planning, and she gave me this weird look and said, I'll think about it. Well, she never brought it up again. I figured she was busy or whatever. I still bought a dress, assuming I'd be part of the wedding somehow. Still hanging in my closet with the tags on. Then one day, I'm scrolling through Facebook. Yeah, I still use it. Sue me. And see all these pictures of her wedding. A fucking wedding I wasn't invited to. Not just not in the wedding party, not even invited as a guest. My parents were there, our cousins were there, even some people from high school she barely talked to anymore were there. But not me, not my husband, and definitely not my kids. I called her immediately, and she actually answered, which surprised me. When I asked her what the hell happened, she hemmed and hawed before finally saying that her in-laws didn't want any disruptions at the wedding, and that my kids might make people uncomfortable. She said she fought really hard to include us, but eventually gave in because it was her special day, and she didn't want any drama. As if my kids are just walking drama machines or something. I remember exactly where I was when she said that. Standing in my kitchen, staring at the stupid refrigerator magnet she'd brought me from her vacation the year before. It had Sisters Forever written on it. I took it down while we were still on the phone and threw it in the trash. Then I called my parents, assuming they'd be as outraged as I was. Nope, they actually defended her. Said that sometimes tough decisions have to be made, and that I should try to understand her position. My dad even had the nerve to say that those kinds of events can be overstimulating for my boys anyway. So maybe it was for the best. As if they know what's best for my kids better than I do. As if we haven't been managing outings and events for years. That's when it hit me that this wasn't new. They'd always treated my boys differently than my cousin's kids. Less birthday presents, less enthusiasm. They'd buy my nephew a drum set, a drum set for a 4-year-old, but get my kids educational toys to help with their development. They'd take my niece to the zoo but suggest my boys might not enjoy that kind of thing. I blocked all of them after that, changed my number, moved across town. We were planning to move anyway because we needed a house with a better layout for the boys, but this accelerated things. My husband was completely on board. He was even more pissed than I was, if that's possible. He never really got along with my family anyway. They always treated him like he wasn't good enough because he works with his hands. God forbid someone be a carpenter instead of sitting in an office all day. We built a new life with friends who actually give a shit about our family. We found a support group for parents of kids with autism. We made friends with other families through that. We have neighbors who invite us to barbecues and don't give a crap if one of my kids needs to wear noise-canceling headphones or take breaks in a quiet room. Just normal people who treat my kids like, kids. That was over 2 years ago. I honestly thought that chapter of my life was closed. I still saw posts about them sometimes through mutual friends, but I just scroll past. I heard through the grapevine that my sister was trying to get pregnant right after the wedding, starting a family right away, or whatever. Good for her, I thought. She can have the perfect little neurotypical family she always wanted. Then yesterday, out of fucking nowhere, my sister, mom, and dad show up at our front door with bags of presents and these fake-ass smiles. I asked how they found our address, and they ignored that question, which is creepy as hell. Seriously, we were unlisted, and none of our mutual friends would have given it to them without asking me first. I'm guessing they hired someone or something, which just makes this whole thing even weirder. My sister started crying immediately, always her go-to move, and saying how much she missed me and the boys. My mom chimed in about how they've done a lot of thinking and realized their mistake. My dad just stood there looking uncomfortable, shifting his weight from foot to foot like he used to do when we were kids and he was about to say no to something. My sister then drops this bomb. She and her husband have been trying for a baby for 2 years with no luck. They've done all these fertility treatments that haven't worked, and now she's reconsidering what family really means. She literally said that phrase like she was reading from a Hallmark card. She talked about how they've seen 3 specialists and done IVF twice, and how her husband's family is pressuring them about carrying on the family name. I just stared at them for a minute trying to process this crap. My mom was nodding along. My dad was examining our porch light like it was the most fascinating thing he'd ever seen. And my sister just kept talking, going on about how she'd had an epiphany about what truly matters in life. Then I told them exactly what I thought. That they only want a relationship now because they can't have their perfect little family, so they're settling for mine. That they didn't care about my boys when they excluded them from a family event because they were, what, embarrassing? But now that Sister Dearest can't have her own kids, suddenly mine are good enough. My dad tried to interrupt with some crap about, that's not fair. But I wasn't finished. I told them that my kids aren't emotional support animals they can ignore and then pick up when it's convenient. They're human beings who were hurt by being treated like they were defective. I reminded them that we used to have Sunday dinner together every week, and then suddenly those invitations stopped when my sister started dating her husband. My mom started crying then, saying I was being cruel, and they've learned their lesson. My sister just stared at me like I'd slapped her, which honestly, I was close to doing. She kept trying to hand me this gift bag, pushing it toward me like it would fix everything. I could see some kind of fancy toy poking out of the top. Exactly the kind of thing that would overstimulate one of my boys and cause a meltdown. They didn't even remember the basics about them. I told them to fuck off and take their guilt gifts with them. Then I shut the door. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely turn the lock, but they had left the gifts outside my doors. I later threw them in the garage. My husband heard the commotion and came downstairs, and I told him what happened. He said I did the right thing, but now I'm second-guessing myself. The thing is, my boys have asked about their grandparents and aunt a few times over the years. Not often, but enough that I know they remember them. Part of me wonders if I'm depriving my kids of family relationships out of spite. But another part of me thinks letting these people back into our lives would just set my kids up for more rejection down the road. What happens when my sister miraculously gets pregnant after all? Will she drop us again? Will my parents go back to treating my kids like they're lesser? I haven't told the boys about the visit. They were at a friend's house when it happened, thank God. I swapped shifts with a coworker last minute. That's the only reason I was even home when they showed up. Am I the asshole here? Should I have at least heard them out for my kids' sake? Date 1. Holy shit. I didn't expect this to blow up like it did. Thanks for all the comments and support. RIP my inbox. A lot of you misunderstood some things though, so let me clarify. 1. My boys aren't severely autistic or anything. They have some sensory issues and struggle with social cues sometimes, but they can absolutely handle a wedding with proper preparation. They've been to other events just fine. That was just an excuse. One of them is actually super quiet and usually just sits and plays his games. The other one is more active but follows rules really well if you explain them clearly. They're not disruptive, unless you consider any child who isn't perfectly silent and still disruptive. 2. To the people saying, well, maybe they really have changed. You weren't there. You didn't see the look on my sister's face when she was talking about her fertility issues. It wasn't about reconnecting with family. It was about her wanting what she couldn't have. It was the same look she used to get when I got a toy she wanted as a kid. 3. And no, they didn't apologize. Not once during their little speech did anyone say, I'm sorry. It was all about how they felt and what they wanted now, how they were struggling, and how reconnecting would be good for them. Not a word about the damage they'd done or how their actions affected my kids. 4. Someone asked about my husband's family. They live on the other side of the country. They send birthday cards and we video chat on holidays, but they're not really involved day to day. They've never been weird about the boy's autism, though, so that's something. 5. And to the person who private messaged me saying I'm using my kid's disability as an excuse to be angry, kindly go fuck yourself. You have no idea what we've been through. Anyway, a lot has happened since my post. My sister has been texting me nonstop since the incident. At first it was more crying and guilt-tripping, but now she's getting nasty, saying I'm punishing her for one mistake and that I'm being childish. One mistake? They excluded my entire family from a major life event and then ignored us for 2 years. That's not one mistake. That's a series of deliberate choices. She also sent this weird text at like 2 a.m. saying she always wanted to be an aunt and that she envied my motherhood journey. Who talks like that? Feels so fake and rehearsed. This is the same person who used to ask me to make the boys wait in another room when she came over because their stemming made her uncomfortable. My parents called too, but I didn't answer because I figured it was they. They left a voicemail saying they want to meet on neutral ground to talk things over like adults. Apparently, they had changed their numbers or something to get around their old numbers being blocked. I did end up telling my husband everything they said, and he thinks they're full of shit too. He reminded me that when our boys were first diagnosed, my parents kept sending us articles about cures and suggesting we try different diets or whatever instead of actually helping or trying to understand. I'd almost forgotten about that. Or the time my mom told a waitress that my son wasn't being rude when he didn't answer her question. He was just autistic. In this loud whisper like it was some shameful secret. My sister also used to make comments about how having twins must be so hard, with this fake sympathy voice, especially after the diagnosis. She'd ask questions like, will they ever be able to live independently? When they were 4. Who asks that about a 4-year-old? Even neurotypical kids can't live independently at 4. I'm still not sure what to do about telling my kids. One of them found a gift bag they left behind. I thought I'd gotten them all, and asked who it was from. I just said it was from an old friend and put it away. I feel weird about lying to them, but I also don't want to get their hopes up about people who might disappear again. They've been doing so well lately. Some of you asked if I'd consider family therapy with them, and maybe someday, but right now I'm just trying to process all this. My husband suggested we take a family trip next month to get away from all this drama, which sounds pretty good right now. There's this place a few hours away with cabins by a lake. The boys went there on a school trip once and loved it. Oh, and weirdly, one of my mom's friends who I haven't spoken to in years sent me a friend request on Facebook yesterday. I'm guessing they're trying to get information through other channels now. I ignored it, obviously. I might update again if anything significant happens, but for now, I'm trying to focus on my actual family, the people who've been here consistently. Update 2. Okay, so it's been about a week since everything went down, and there have been some developments. I wasn't going to update again so soon, but stuff keeps happening and I need to vent. First off, thanks to everyone who commented with actual helpful advice instead of just calling me bitter, which yeah, no shit I'm bitter, wouldn't you be? And for those asking, no, I haven't looked at the presents they brought, but I would check them out before posting this update. For now, they're sitting in the garage. So, my sister showed up at my workplace on Tuesday. I work part-time at this small office, and she just walked in during my shift. I have no idea how she found out where I work, which continues to be super creepy. I took her outside because I didn't want to cause a scene in front of my coworkers. I was furious but tried to keep my voice down because we were in the parking lot and people could see us. She started with this whole speech about how she's been doing a lot of soul-searching, her exact words, and how finding out she can't have kids has put things in perspective for her. Then she started talking about how her husband has evolved in his thinking about special needs children. Again, her words, and said in this weird whisper like it's some kind of secret. I just stood there wondering if she was reading from a script because none of it sounded genuine. She kept checking her phone while she was talking, which is something she always does when she's lying. She used to do it when we were teenagers and she'd make up excuses for why she couldn't do something with me. Then she got to the point. Her husband's family is having this big reunion thing in a few months, and she wants to show them what real family looks like by bringing me and the boys. She literally said she wanted to show them how amazing special kids can be. Like my children are some kind of inspiration porn for her in-laws. That's when it clicked. This isn't about reconnecting with us at all. This is about her showing off to her in-laws that she has some kind of relationship with her nephews, like we're props in her life story or something, like my kids are some kind of consolation prize or backup plan since she can't have her own. I told her I had to get back to work and walked away. She called after me that I need to stop living in the past. Which is rich coming from someone who only wants a relationship now that her original plan didn't work out. I was shaking for the rest of my shift. My boss noticed and let me leave early, which was decent of her. Here's the thing. I might have considered letting them back in gradually if they'd shown any understanding of what they did wrong. But they're still treating my kids like they're different or special or whatever. Not just kids who deserve to be treated with basic respect. They're still making it about them and their needs. Then yesterday, my mom called from a new number I didn't recognize, which is how I ended up answering. She said my sister is devastated and that I'm being too hard on her. I asked her point blank, "Did you think it was wrong to exclude us from the wedding?" She didn't answer directly, just said something about complicated situations and doing what seems best at the time. I pushed her on it, and she finally admitted that she thought the wedding wasn't an appropriate setting for children with issues. Those were her exact words. Not even using their names or acknowledging them as her grandchildren. Just children with issues. I hung up. I'm done with the non-apologies and excuses, with the implication that my kids are somehow less than other children. I'm done with the way they talk around the real issue, which is that they're embarrassed by my kids and only want a relationship now because circumstances have changed for them. My husband took the boys out for ice cream after school today, and while they were gone, I finally went through those gift bags. It was exactly what I expected. Generic toys that showed they don't know my kids at all. Stuff that's way too young for them or that doesn't align with their interests at all. There was a card in one of the bags with a check for a pretty significant amount of money. No note, just the check, like they're trying to buy their way back into our lives. I ripped it up. We don't need their money. We've been doing fine without it for 2 years. As for my boys, I finally sat down with them last night and explained in simple terms that sometimes family members don't treat each other very well, and that's why they haven't seen their grandparents or aunt in a while. I didn't go into detail or try to make them take sides. One of them asked if they'd see them again, and I said, maybe someday, but not right now. They seemed to accept it pretty easily, which makes me think they don't remember as much about my family as I thought they did. 2 years is a long time when you're 11. One of them mentioned that he remembered Grandma made good cookies, and the other one said he didn't like how Grandpa's house smelled. It did have a weird mothball smell. Then they wanted to know if they could play video games, and that was that. I think that was the right approach. They seemed okay with it today. My sister posted this vague thing on social media about forgiving people who don't know how to accept love or some crap like that. Several relatives commented with heart emojis. I guess I'm the villain in their version of the story. Fine by me. So yeah, that's where things stand. Am I still the asshole? Maybe. But I'd rather be an asshole than let my kids be used as emotional band-aids for someone else's disappointment. Update 3. I wasn't planning to update again so soon. But things have escalated and I'm still processing everything that happened. So remember how I mentioned my sister posted that vague thing on social media? Well, apparently she's been posting a lot more than that. A mutual friend, one of the few who hasn't taken sides, sent me screenshots of stuff my sister has been saying about me online. She's basically painting herself as this heartbroken aunt who just wants to reconnect with her nephews and me as this vindictive bitch who's using my kids as weapons. She's even got this hashtag she's using, #anti-love or something equally nauseating. What's really infuriating is that she's sharing information about my kids, their ages, that they're autistic, even some old photos of them, all for sympathy points from her stupid followers. I'm seriously considering legal action because this feels like a huge invasion of privacy. My kids didn't ask to be part of her social media pity party. But wait, it gets better. Or worse, actually. Yesterday, I got a call from the school saying my parents showed up there trying to see the boys. They told the office they were the grandparents and wanted to surprise them at lunch. Thankfully, they're not on the approved pickup list, so the school called me immediately. I've never been so grateful for school security protocols. I called my parents right away and lost my shit. I told them if they ever tried something like that again, I'd get a restraining order. My dad actually tried to defend it, saying they just wanted to see the boys and didn't think it was a big deal. Not a big deal to show up unannounced at an elementary school? In what world is that normal behavior? My mom got on the phone and started crying again, saying they were desperate and didn't know what else to do. I told them what else they could do. Respect my fucking boundaries for once in their lives. Then I hung up and called my friend for advice on restraining orders just in case. I had to leave work early again to go talk to the school principal and make sure they understood the situation. She was actually really supportive and said they'd make a note in the boys' files about unauthorized visitors. I felt like I was in some bizarre custody battle, except it's with people who have no legal right to my kids in the first place. Then last night, the doorbell rings around 8 p.m. I look out the peephole and see my sister's husband standing there. Not my sister, not my parents, her husband. The same guy who thought my kids weren't good enough to be at his precious wedding. I didn't open the door, just called out that he needed to leave or I'd call the police. He slipped an envelope under the door and left without saying anything. Inside was a formal letter from him, apologizing for any misunderstandings and explaining how he's grown as a person since getting married. There was also another check bigger than the last one. He wrote in the memo line, "For the boy's future, like we need his charity." The whole thing reads like it was written by a PR team. There's not a single specific thing in there about what he did wrong or why it hurt us. Just vague platitudes about family bonds and second chances. I showed it to my husband, and he just laughed and said, "This guy still doesn't get it, does he?" I'm exhausted by all of this. It feels like they're wearing me down on purpose, like they think if they just keep pushing and pushing, I'll eventually give in. The boys have picked up on my stress too. I sat them both down and promised that we weren't going anywhere, that they were safe, and that they didn't need to worry. I explained that sometimes adults have disagreements that take time to work out. I kept it simple and reassuring. They seemed okay after that, but I hate that this is affecting them at all. My husband suggested we should document everything that's happening in case we do need to get legal protection, so I've started keeping a log of all the contact attempts, saving texts and voicemails, taking screenshots of my sister's posts, that kind of thing. Feels extreme, but so do showing up at someone's workplace or their kid's school. For now, my plan is to continue ignoring them as much as possible while protecting my family. I've blocked my sister's new social media accounts, changed my email password just in case, and made sure all our emergency contacts are up to date with people we actually trust. I'm still not sure if I'm handling this right. I guess my question now is, how do I protect my kids from all this drama while still making sure they don't feel like there's some big secret being kept from them? And am I wrong for thinking that some relationships are just too damaged to fix, no matter how much soul-searching the other person claims to have done? Update for, well, it's been a few weeks since my last update. Things have finally calmed down a bit, which is why I haven't felt the need to post. But I figured I should wrap this up for those who have been following along and offering support. First, thanks for all the messages checking in on us. It means a lot to know there are people out there who understand where I'm coming from, even if they've never met me or my kids. After the school incident, I had my friend's lawyers help me to draft me a formal cease and desist letter to my parents and sister. It's not legally binding in the same way as a restraining order, but it does create a paper trail if things escalate further. The letter basically stated that any further unannounced visits to our home, my workplace, or the kids' school would result in legal action. Surprisingly, it seems to have worked. My sister has stopped posting about us on social media, as far as I know, and there have been no more surprise visits. My parents sent a brief email acknowledging receipt of the letter and saying they need time to process everything. Fine by me. My husband and I did end up taking the trip to the lake. We rented a cabin for a long weekend and just disconnected from everything. The boys loved it. They collected rocks, spotted wildlife, and my husband taught them how to skip stones on the water. It was exactly what we all needed. I've been doing some thinking about family and what it really means. Growing up, I always thought family was this non-negotiable thing. You're stuck with who you're related to, for better or worse. But as I've gotten older, I've realized that family is really about who shows up for you consistently, who accepts you as you are, who puts in the effort to understand and support you. I don't know if my sister, parents, and I will ever reconcile. Maybe someday, if they can demonstrate that they've truly changed and are willing to accept my kids exactly as they are. But I'm not holding my breath, and I'm not putting my life on hold waiting for it to happen. Someone in the comments of my last post said something that really stuck with me. Your only obligation is to the family you've chosen, not the family you were born into. That feels right to me. For now, we're just living our lives. I probably won't update again unless something major changes. Thanks again for listening and for the support. It helped more than you know. Now on to the next story. Story 4. My 25F soon-to-be ex-boyfriend, 28M, and I have been living together for the past few months, dating for about 3 years. I work full-time, as does he. He makes significantly more than me, probably close to 3x more than I do, but I honestly couldn't tell you exactly how much he makes because he's very dodgy about his income. We split our bills. He pays about 60%, which is honestly still a bit tight for me, but I have been making it work. I have no savings. When we moved in together, we each had our own belongings that we were bringing. I had my bed, he had his. He had a couch, etc. Our plan when moving in was to use his bed as our bed and mine would be in the guest room because his was larger. We weren't planning on keeping his couch forever but agreed to buy one at a later time because I couldn't financially swing a deposit, first month's rent, all other moving expenses, etc., plus a new couch before moving day. He threw out his bed and couch and decided he wanted to buy new furniture. He had a bed bug scare due to his elderly grandmother's home having bed bugs, and he thought he brought them to his apartment after visiting her. It ended up not being bed bugs, so I understand why he threw them out. Here's where things get frustrating. He knew that I couldn't afford to buy new furniture at the time, and I would need some time to save up. So he agreed to pay for the furniture, and I would pay him back in increments each month. He ended up purchasing a very expensive mattress and a brand new couch, which I was there to help pick out. I told him numerous times that if he really wanted to go with these expensive pieces of furniture, it would be a while before I could pay him back in full for my portion. He proceeded anyway, and I gave him my budget for how much I could pay him each month on top of rent and my personal bills. While I recognize that he has spent a good amount more than I have, I am still living outside of my means with this financial agreement that we have. We have had arguments because of this, and he states that I should just do whatever he asks of me because he has been so generous with finances. He asks dumb things of me all the time. For example, I had gotten home from work early after an extremely long week and was relaxing on the couch when he comes home. He goes into the kitchen and I hear him say, "Will you make me a snack?" as he's opening the fridge. I get irritated because I had just gotten home and wanted to relax and didn't understand why he couldn't make his own snack as he was standing with his head in the fridge already. So I said no. He gets extremely upset. This turns into a massive argument about how he is completely financially supporting me and I'm just not grateful for it at all. And all he's asking is that I be nice to him. I explained to him that I'm not going to do everything he asks of me simply because he can afford more than I can. I told him that it was unfair for him to use my financial situation as a control tactic. He went on to tell me that I am simply not equal to him because I am a woman and he is a man. This is a wild take to me, and I should just listen to him and not have an attitude when he asks me to do things. This set me off. I told him that I cannot do it anymore and I would like to move out. He has told me multiple times that he can afford to live here without me, so I figured it wouldn't be an issue. There are other things that led to me calling it quits, like frequent boundary crossing, rude name-calling from him, and him being borderline abusive physically. He likes to playfully pin me on the floor, bite, grab, immobilize me, etc. He calls it being playful. But it seriously makes me angry, and I have made it very clear to him. Now I am essentially holed up in our guest bedroom, looking for a way out because I have no savings and living with him has drained my financial resources. I know that the longer I stay here, I will just continue to dig myself deeper into the hole financially. I have family, but they are hours away in a different state and I cannot leave my job without notice. I've been looking for places in this area that I can afford, but it's an odd time of year to rent and there aren't many places available. I just don't know how to get out before I lose my mind. Any and all advice is welcome. Update. It's 2 days later and I have officially moved out of state. To all those saying he is physically and financially abusive, you are correct. The night after I posted this, he came into the spare bedroom where I was sleeping and woke me up at 1 o'clock in the morning. He grabbed my phone out of the bed and stormed off with it. I followed him and tried for a few minutes to get my phone back from him. I eventually got it back and he followed me back downstairs, then upstairs, then back downstairs. He followed me around grabbing me by my wrists, attempting to pin me onto the floor or the bed. He would pick me up and try to carry me outside of the house as I was yelling at him to stop and just let me go back to sleep. He followed me downstairs where I was getting back in bed to go back to sleep because it was the middle of the night. He jumped in the bed with me after undressing himself and wrapped his arms and legs around me, immobilizing me, and then proceeded to try to bite me. I did poke him in the eye by accident while trying to shove him off of me. I was swinging my arms at him as much as I could while being pinned down by his arms, legs, and entire body weight. He didn't stop until I screamed at him that I wanted nothing to do with him and to leave me the hell alone. At this point, he becomes furious, gets up, and says that if that's how I feel then I can just get the hell out right now. He then goes to the closet with my clothes hanging in them and tries to pull my clothes out of the closet. I go to stop him, pulling his arm out of the hangers, and he stumbles back, running into the closet door. He continues to shout about how I can get the hell out and find somewhere else to stay or go to a hotel. I broke down sobbing, just completely drained mentally and physically after going around for about an hour trying to get him to leave me alone. I end up calling my mom a little after 2 a.m., sobbing and telling her that I need to come home and I need help. I tell her what's going on as he, my ex, is still standing over me in the guest bedroom. I'm sitting in the bed and he is standing next to the bed just watching me. As soon as he realizes that I am talking with my mom, he switches up really quick and says to my mother, "I'm really sorry you're dealing with this. She is going through nicotine withdrawal and is treating me like shit." I started yelling at him through my sobbing with my mother still on the phone, telling him to leave me the hell alone, to go away and let me go to sleep, etc. He begins recording me on his phone at some point. This goes on for a bit. I have my mom on the phone with me and my ex is just standing in the guest room next to me while I'm sobbing in the bed. I attempt to go upstairs out onto our back deck to talk to my mom without him standing over me. He follows me, still playing the innocent victim. I again start yelling and telling him to leave me alone. Eventually, he gets irritated enough by my yelling for him to stop following me and leave me alone and says that he will go somewhere else for the time being. He'll pack a bag and give me time to move my stuff out. My mother is still on the phone, so he is using a very calm tone of voice and acting as though he's been extremely rational and calm the entire time while I am a hysterical mess. While he is gathering some of his things, my dad wakes up and my mom fills him in on what is going on. My dad immediately said he is going to call the police. My ex overheard this, looked at me and just said, "That's crazy. and walked out. About 20 minutes later, after throwing his house key at me, my parents did call the police. They showed up probably 10 to 15 minutes after my ex left the house. I spoke with the police about what was going on, and they informed me that my ex had called them before my parents even had. He called the police immediately after he overheard my dad saying he was going to call the police. He also told the police that I attacked him. I hit him several times in the face, open and closed-handed. He told the police that I punched him in the face. I had a red mark on my wrist from my ex grabbing me that I showed the officer, and he said that there wasn't anything there that he could see, and there was no legitimate reason for them to remove either of us from the home. The officer told me that my ex could return to the home if he wished to, and that we would just have to not interact with each other. There would be an affidavit submitted to the court with each of our statements, and they will determine if charges will be filed against either of us. The officer left and returned with a domestic violence resource pamphlet and asked me to give him the key that my ex had thrown at me before leaving the home. I complied, and the officer told me that my ex had been sitting just down the street from our house and would be returning in about 30 seconds, but that I need to stay on the guest bedroom level and my ex needs to stay on the top level and we need to not interact with each other at all. I agreed to do that. My ex returns. I am back in bed downstairs, still on the phone with my mom. After several hours, my parents decided that they were going to come get me, so they got on the road. During my conversation with the police officers, I remained on the phone with my mom all night, attempting to sleep but only being able to doze for a few minutes at a time before waking again. In the morning, my ex comes walking downstairs on the level that is supposed to be off limits to him per our agreement with the officer. I overhear him on the phone with a reporting center for reporter abuse of adults or children. He gives them my name and information, and I also overhear him say my sister's name and something about violence in that family. About 20 minutes later, he comes downstairs again as I'm packing my things. I tell him he needs to go back upstairs and leave me alone. He just says, "I will. Just so you are aware, I'm having a PFA filed against you. So I need to know when your parents will be here, so I can let my attorney know. Protection from abuse order." I ignore him and he walks back upstairs. I go on with packing my things, and sometime later he comes back downstairs. I am in the guest bedroom changing and he pushes the door open. It wasn't completely latched. He was not supposed to be down there and starts asking me again when I am leaving. I tell him to get the hell out. He can see that I am changing and stop coming downstairs. He then says, "I need to know what date you'll be leaving so I can file the PFA. Once I file it, you can't be here." I said, "Okay, great." He walks back upstairs. My mom and dad start talking about how what he is doing is an intimidation tactic, and I'm just questioning why he's claiming he is so afraid of me that he needs a protection order, but he's not afraid of coming downstairs and trying to talk to me multiple times, walking around for no reason on speakerphone with the reporting center. The whole situation just felt like he was baiting me. My parents eventually showed up. They called the police ahead of time and asked that an officer meet them at the house because my ex was still there with free range of the house while I was still holed up in the basement bedroom. My ex, of course, spoke with the officer when he arrived and appeared calm, stating that he will go elsewhere while we do what we need to do to get my stuff moved out. He stated all he asks is that we just lock up after we leave. The officer stays outside the home while we move all of my belongings. He ends up staying for probably close to 1.5 to 2 hours. After packing all of my things, I tell the officer that the home is locked, the key is left by the door, and I will be returning to my home state. I went to my office building. I had spoken with my supervisor early that morning, so she was aware of what was happening. I met with her and she informed me that they understood me having to leave so abruptly, and they would be paying out all of my sick leave and PTO to cover me for the next 4 weeks, and that if at any point I wanted to return, they would reserve my position. I thanked her and apologized profusely about the situation. I feel so horrible about leaving a position with no notice at all, and one that has been a really fantastic job that I saw myself staying at long-term and was so generous and understanding about my situation. I am now back in my home state with my parents and siblings, and I feel like I'm living in a fever dream. None of it feels real at the moment. This is possibly the worst 24 to 48 hours I've ever experienced. I am not looking forward to what my life will look like if I have to go to court over this, if my ex actually files for a PFA, and/or his statement leads the courts to believe that charges need to be filed on me. I don't know what is going to happen next, but I am out and I am safe. Now on to the next story. Story 5. Friend secretly recorded my husband and posted him on TikTok. I, 28F, am friends with this girl. Let's call her June. Also 28F. In fact, my husband 32M, and I often hang out with June and her boyfriend. I go on double dates, have weekend trips, etc. We've known each other for over 2 years. I would say that we four were pretty tight as a group, up until this weekend. My husband is an orthodontist. One of his patients is June's half-sister, Ria, 12F. June often is the one accompanying Ria to her dental appointments. June is also a small-time online influencer. She's always recording and vlogging and stuff. Though my husband and I have made it clear to her that we're absolutely not okay with our faces in her vlogs online, and she seemed to respect that boundary. We don't use social media apart from Reddit, and we trusted her word when she said she's not going to post us online. Cut to last weekend. My brother sent me this link with the message, "Dude, you got to watch this." I opened the link, and it directed me to June's TikTok account. She doesn't have many followers, less than 10K. But the particular video he sent me had like 500,000 views/likes. I'm not sure which. Lo and behold, it was a video compilation of my husband with a title, "God, I see what you've done for others." The video was honestly the creepiest thing I've ever seen. She had recorded my husband during various of our double dates together, and it was clear he wasn't even aware he's being recorded. In some of the clips, she would start with her face, and then pan the camera towards my husband with a cutesy expression and mouthing words like, "Oh my God." The worst one was where he was working on her half-sister, Ria, wearing scrubs, and she'd recorded even that. She didn't even bother to blur out the kid's face while she was lying on the dental chair. I showed the video to my husband, and he was horrified. He said it made him so uncomfortable and violated, knowing that someone had been secretly recording him. He was angry that she'd recorded him working on a patient. He texted her asking to take down the video and delete every video she has of him. First, she feigned ignorance. Then she said that she meant no harm and that it was all for online engagement since, and I quote, "TikToks with hot guys go viral very fast," and that she gained a lot of followers after posting that. This was also weird, but my husband and I got our families and friends to report the video, and thankfully it's being taken down now. This pissed off June, and she sent me a long text saying how I was jealous of her online success and that I couldn't stand seeing her succeed, blah blah blah. I replied saying, "You're delusional and unhinged. You're not successful and you'll never be. Stay away from us, you creepy weirdo." Now she's all weepy and depressed and has been telling our common friends how mean I was to her. She's also been posting about mental health on her socials and about how mean some women are with their words. A comments where OP has replied, "Commenter, NTA. You and your husband had set clear boundaries, and she violated those boundaries. This shows that she does not respect y'all at all. I recommend cutting her off entirely, as anyone who disturbs your peace is not worth your time." P.S. We're cutting her off entirely. I don't know if her boyfriend is aware of this or not, but I guess he'll have to be collateral damage, cause I don't want her to weasel her way back into our lives. Commenter 2, NTA. People who think online engagement is more important than basic human decency are, sadly, not at all uncommon, and they are, as you say, delusional and unhinged. Their success is not real, and except in a very few cases, it never will be. It's psychotic, honestly. My husband is so freaked out about this. I feel so bad for him. Commenter 3. He might need to drop the half-sister as a patient and or tell the parents that she, June, is not allowed to accompany her anymore. I agree that is a creepy weirdo. If she can't get followers or likes without lying and getting consent for people to be recorded, then she needs to find a new career. OP. Yes, he's in the process of informing her parents. I don't think he's going to drop her as a patient as her treatment is almost done, and it's going to be a hassle for her to find a new orthodontist. Commenter 4. He needs to ban her sister, your former friend, from the room while he is treating the patient. He needs to have a female staff member assist him and act as a chaperone, should your friend try to make baseless accusations. OP. There's a rule in his practice that a female dental assistant has to be present whenever they, the male doctors, are working on female patients. As most of the patients are young kids/teens, and they might be more comfortable with a woman around. Even in the video she posted, there is a woman assisting my husband. He's reached out to the kids' parents. They're being given two choices. Either they chaperone their daughter or they need to find a different orthodontist. I really hope it doesn't come to baseless accusations, though. Update 1. I don't want to make another post for the same thing, and I doubt I'm going to be updating again. My husband's practice reached out to Ria's parents and informed them about the situation via an email as they wanted everything documented. Like I mentioned in the comments, the parents have responded. They are shocked and very, very apologetic. They have agreed to chaperone Ria on her appointments instead of June. They wanted to meet my husband personally to apologize, but he informed them that that won't be necessary. June's TikTok video is still in the process of being taken down. No new updates on that. I guess she contested the reports or something. I'm not entirely sure. My husband and I have blocked her. My brother is keeping an eye on her account, though, just in case she posts something else about us. We'll see what to do with / when it happens. We're going to be consulting a lawyer if she bothers us again in the future. My husband is kind of shaken up / upset / annoyed about this whole thing. He's taken some days off from work, and so have I. We'll plan a trip somewhere, maybe to take his mind off of these things. Right now, I need to be there for him. I won't be posting anything for now. We haven't contacted her boyfriend yet. My husband is not in the right headspace right now, and I feel it'll be better if we focus on ourselves for the time being. We don't want the added headache of how the boyfriend will react / if he's in on this or whatever. We'll inform him after some time. I know this is selfish, but I think it's for the best. Thank you all for the responses. Smiley face. Update 2. I genuinely hoped I wouldn't be updating this story again, but life had other plans. We thought the drama was done, but nope. We filled June's boyfriend in on everything, and he was shocked, hurt, and confused. Turns out June managed his social media, and he had no clue what she was posting. He thanked us, and we thought that was it. But then he asked to meet up, saying he needed to discuss something. To be honest, we were extremely hesitant to meet with him. We were so done with the drama and didn't want to get sucked back in. But he seemed genuinely concerned and willing to listen, so we agreed. At the meeting, he revealed he'd confronted June. She broke down, professed her love, and claimed her obsession with my husband was for social media clout. Apparently, his total package made for great content. When he asked to see her phone, she refused, so he checked her laptop and found hundreds of sneaky photos and videos of my husband. And for laughs, she had pics of me looking my absolute worst. Mouth open while eating, weird faces, the works. I think I'm pretty good looking, but these photos were the opposite. It's like she wanted to prove a point about my husband's ugly wife. June's boyfriend dumped her, but honestly, we're even more freaked out now. The scale of her obsession is terrifying. Hundreds of photos and videos? That's not just a crush. That's a fixation. The thought of her escalating to something more is keeping us up at night. As a small consolation, June's boyfriend made her delete the videos from her social media and laptop, but God knows how many more copies she has. Despite June not reaching out after all this went down, we're still on high alert. Her radio silence is kind of unnerving, and we're bracing ourselves for whatever might come next. Hopefully, it is, in fact, just for social media clout, not some weird baby reindeer type obsession with my husband. It's kind of unsettling how she was friends with me for over 2 years. We hung out often, we've gone on weekend trips with her and her boyfriend, we have so many mutual friends, and yet no one knew she was doing this behind our backs. Either I'm bad at reading people or she's very good at being sneaky and deceptive. I'm also mentally kicking myself for not realizing that someone was taking pictures of me. I feel my husband and I both need to be less dumb and more aware of our surroundings, lol. On a brighter note, Ria's parents are super thankful to my husband for still treating Ria after everything. That's it for now. Hopefully, this is really the end. Update 3. I really didn't want to update this situation, but things have taken a seriously dark turn. When I posted about June's thing for my husband a month ago, I thought it was just some weird crush. Now it's flat out terrifying. The day after my last post, my husband got a super creepy message from a random number. "You have got it all wrong. Please meet me. I'll make you understand." We freaked. Lawyers and cops are on it, trying to get a restraining order. Both our workplaces have ramped up security, and we've warned friends and family to keep an eye out. This whole thing is destroying my husband's mental health. He's anxious 24/7, wondering if he's being followed. He stopped going to work because the feeling of being watched is overwhelming. We're trying to prioritize his safety, and honestly, it's breaking my heart. The other night, he broke down in tears. I've never seen him cry before. It was shattering. He's been talking to a therapist online, trying to cope with the stress and anxiety, but even that's not easing his mind. He's consumed by fear for my safety, constantly worrying that June will harm me to get to him. We're covering our bases. Security cams, dash cams, the whole works, and I've scoured our home twice for any hidden devices. Thank God, all clear. If things get worse, we're prepared to up and move. Honestly, it's better to have a life in a different state than be dead here. It's heartbreaking to think about leaving our friends, family, and everything behind, but we'll do what it takes to stay safe. Some of the advice on here was really helpful, and I've done most of what was suggested. If anyone has any more insights, please share. I'm desperate at this point, TBH. Update 4. November 9th, 2024. I've been sharing some updates on a pretty unsettling situation we've been dealing with. For those who haven't seen my previous posts, the short version is that my husband and I had a friend, June, who started acting super obsessively toward my husband. She secretly recorded him, posted weird videos of him online, and we eventually had to cut ties with her. So, after not hearing from June for 3 weeks, things took a really creepy turn. On Friday, we hadn't heard a word from her, so we both got a little more relaxed about the whole situation. We went back to work, and everything seemed fine, but turns out we were wrong. My husband went to the store after work to grab some groceries. He had no idea June was following him, but when he got to the parking lot, there she was. As soon as he saw her, he tried to get to his car as quickly as possible, but she was already closer and blocked the way to the door. He tried to walk away, but she stepped in front of him, begging him to talk to her. She kept saying it was just a harmless crush, and that she'd leave us alone if he'd just listen. She even said, "Please talk to me." He didn't respond and kept trying to walk away, but she wouldn't let him. She begged again and reached into her coat pocket. My husband heard a metallic sound and instantly thought she might be pulling out a weapon. In a split second, he grabbed her hand to stop her and pushed her away with force. She lost her balance and fell down, but he didn't stick around. He quickly jumped in his car and sped off as fast as he could. Thankfully, she didn't follow him. After getting away, my husband immediately contacted the police. They managed to get security footage from the parking lot, and it shows 2 people, a man and a woman, running towards the car. After a short while, the man pushes the woman down and quickly gets in the car, speeding off. The footage wasn't super clear, but it shows the general sequence of events. Of course, it's still not totally clear what she was planning or what she had on her, but the situation was extremely tense. We've been trying to get a restraining order against her, and hopefully this time we'll get it. But we're not entirely sure how things will unfold now. We're also moving to my parents' home country for a while just to feel safer and take a step back from everything. It's going to be tough rebuilding our lives from scratch, but I guess that's what's in our destiny. So yeah, that's where we're at. This whole situation is terrifying, and we're just trying to keep our heads straight and stay safe. I'll keep you all posted if anything else happens, but for now, we're just trying to lay low and handle this as best as we can. Now on to the next story. Story 6. I had a one-night stand with the guy whose fiancée my ex cheated with, but now I'm pregnant. He blocked me, and my entire family decided to disown me. My ex and I met when I was 20, but we were only friends until we started dating 2.5 years ago. I found out last year that my ex had been cheating on me for basically our whole relationship with a girl he met through a mutual friend. I broke things off after I found out and told the girl's fiancé about their affair. He ended up breaking off their engagement after he found out, and she seemed nonchalant about it until she realized that my ex's money wasn't actually his. My grandma left me a lot after she passed back in 2019, and my ex had been flaunting around the things I'd gifted him throughout our relationship to her, even going as far as to claim that the house and antique car my grandpa left for me as well were my ex's. It's not something I'm proud of now that I think back to it, But I did allow my ex to walk all over me for the first month or two after I broke things off because I missed him so much. I gave him money and tried to make things work, but would always get reprimanded by my parents and friends when I'd run to them crying after he ghosted me for her. I didn't officially give him up until the girl's ex-fiancé messaged me and told me that she was rubbing it in some of their old friends' faces about how pathetic I was and how desperate I was for my ex, who didn't even give an F about me. I was really upset and asked him if he'd be willing to meet up with me because I knew that if I talked to my parents or friends about this, then they'd just lecture me even more. He agreed, and the two of us met up at a random food cart place. We ended up spending most of the day just exploring and talking about how we were doing. He also confided in me about his relationship with his ex. They'd known each other for 10 years, and they liked each other for most of the time they were friends, but he wasn't looking for a relationship because he was focusing on school. He had decided to give them a chance after she'd driven 12+ hours overnight to him because they talked on the phone, and he said he was feeling under the weather and was stressed from how vigorous his residency schedule was. She dropped everything to take care of him, helped clean his place, and made him some home-cooked meals after finding out that he was surviving off of vending machine snacks and instant coffee. He told me in detail about how he'd never felt so loved and cared for, how after she'd done that for him, he decided that she was the one, that if this wasn't love, then love wasn't real. Finding out that she was cheating for the last 2 years made everything click into place. She'd been pushing off getting married, telling all her friends that she was having doubts about him. He'd been trying to convince her into going to couples counseling when I broke the news to him that she was sleeping with my ex. I felt like a monster hearing their love story and then realizing that they didn't get their happy ending because of my ex, and I messed with my head. We continued to talk from time to time, checking in on each other and me eating up for a quick bite every now and then. We lost contact after the girl my ex cheated on me with somehow convinced him to take her back. I became slightly depressed after he cut me off, explaining to me that he was still in love with her and wanted to work things out, which meant a clean slate. I found out through some internet snooping that my ex cheated on her, too, which was why she went back to her ex-fiancé. A few months passed, and things went back to semi-normal. I started getting therapy and was about ready to put myself back out there to try out the dating pool again when around New Year's, I got a call from the guy. He was crying and asking if I was available to talk. I, of course, said yes and, out of concern, met up with him at his place. He broke down to me and told me about how he'd found her and my ex in his mom's guest bedroom during Christmas, when she'd snuck him in for a quickie during his family's busy holiday party. All hell broke loose when he'd found them in the guest bedroom after spending 20 minutes looking for her everywhere. We drank a bit and ended up having sex. He apologized and told me that it was a mistake and he wasn't in his right mind, that he just wanted revenge sex, but it didn't make him feel any better after. I tried to message him platonically a few times after to see if he was all right, but he blocked me, so I dropped it and went on with my therapy and life. I went in last week to check with my doctor since I've been getting bad cramps and to get a new prescription refill for my birth control that I used to help with my PCOS. I had to do a usual test to double-check for the possibility if I was pregnant and was very surprised when it came back positive. I have been sitting on this new knowledge and have been contemplating if I should tell him, not tell him, or if I should even keep the pregnancy. My doctor did inform that since I am still in the earlier stages, I am still at a big risk of having a miscarriage, so I don't know if I should even be worrying at all about all of this since there is a chance that I could lose it, and then it had just seemed like I was trying to grab his attention or something, especially after he made it clear to me that he wasn't comfortable talking to me anymore after we slept together. I haven't told anyone, and I've been going crazy because I don't know what to do. Update 1. A lot has happened since my original post. I know a lot of people were against this, but I went through with the pregnancy, and I am forever thankful for my beautiful baby. I had originally planned to get an abortion, but I found myself unable to go through with the appointment. I am pro-choice and always will be. Just because I chose to keep my baby doesn't mean another woman/girl should be forced to keep a pregnancy they do not wish to continue. Everyone has a right to their own bodies. My parents were very upset with me, and my whole family disowned me. I listened to what some of you said about letting the father know. We'll be referring to him as Dave. After many failed attempts to reach out to him, I decided to go in person. Dave was not happy when I showed up at his place, but when I told him why, he agreed to talk with me. Dave let me know that he'd officially ended things with his ex and wanted to go no contact with me because I was another tie to his past with her. but he was willing to try and figure out a co-parenting plan with me if I agreed to a paternity test first. I, of course, felt a bit bad about the paternity test part but agreed to it since we both had only been acquaintances that bonded over our trauma. Everything was honestly easy cruising until I started to spot around the 26-week mark. My OB explained that while spotting is normal while pregnant, mine was heavier and my blood sugar/blood pressure also both worried them because of gestational diabetes and preeclampsia risk. After a few nights of Dave insisting on sleeping on my couch, I had him help me move some of my things to his place since he lived closer to the hospital. I am very thankful I decided to semi-move in with him when I did because I went into premature labor at 32 weeks. I am very thankful to have had Dave and his family as my support system. His mom would come and switch out with him at the hospital and advocated for me whenever I felt washed out or unheard. She helped me both emotionally and physically and stood by me. Dave's mom also helped me work through my emotions when all I wanted was my mom. She and my dad had gone no contact with me after I decided to keep and have my baby. Dave's mom was an absolute godsend also because she's a retired nurse. She started an OB, went to NICU, and eventually later settled into lactation before retiring and explained things to me when we found out that my baby had respiratory problems and had SUA, single umbilical artery, and that it could have been a factor into why I went into premature labor. She stayed with Dave and I so she could help me with pumping since I wasn't able to produce milk and encouraged me when I felt like such a failure for not being able to take care of my son when he needed me most. She drove me to and from the hospital while my son was in the NICU because I was healing and so mentally/physically exhausted. I really and truly believe that I didn't fall into deep postpartum depression because she held me and helped me with each step and was always so patient with me even when I wasn't with myself. Dave's mom would constantly remind me that nothing was our fault and no one did anything wrong. It's just that everyone is faced with hardship in life, and this was one we'd work together to get through. My son graduated from the NICU and came home a month after I did. Dave's mom visited us often and helped with him since Dave and I are first-time parents. Dave's dad joked that he felt like she and I had the baby together and he and Dave were both just background characters that make guest star appearances every now and then since Dave was working so much in order to build more PTO, and his mom wouldn't bring his dad along when she'd come visit since she didn't want him to disturb me and the baby with his loudness. Dave's dad is hard of hearing and can sometimes be unaware of his volume, so he took no offense to it. Dave's siblings and family members posted a lot about our son because he was the first grandchild and first baby in a long time. Dave's youngest cousin is 17 turning 18 this year. Somehow, someone must have shared a photo or something, but pictures of us reached my family and my parents demanded I let them meet my son. Dave was supportive of whatever I chose to do and said he'd agree to them meeting him if that's what I wanted. After thinking about it for a few days, I decided that I wanted to talk to my parents before I let them meet my son. When we met up to talk, my parents were offended that I didn't bring my son with us and left him with Dave's parents. They said some really hurtful things and then my dad started to question on when Dave was going to ask him for permission for us to get married since we didn't already have a shotgun wedding while I was pregnant. I was okay with them insulting me since I'd grown up with it and was used to it, but once my parents put their target on Dave and his family, I became upset and decided it was time for us to leave. My parents did try to petition for legal visitation rights. Honestly, before this whole ordeal, I did not even know that grandparents' rights existed but were denied because my son is still very young and because both Dave and I are very much on good terms, are living in the same household, and they couldn't find or prove that there was any danger to our son's well-being. My family did try to reach out to us and claim that we were horrible people for denying my parents their grandchild, but no one ever seemed to be able to make a peep when Dave's family would defend us and point out that my family had been the one to disown me and that no one cared to see if I was okay until after I had the baby and everything was handled. Dave's mom and my mom got in a verbal, almost physical altercation after my mom had made false reports to CPS and called the police to do multiple welfare checks on us. My mom was given a warning by the police for harassing us after one specific incident where she threw a tantrum and caused a scene when the police found nothing wrong in the welfare check and refused to listen to her demands to have my son temporarily taken away from us and put in her custody for his safety. Dave and I currently have restraining orders pending against my parents and certain family members. One of the reasons I decided to update is because about 2 months ago, a friend of Dave's asked him out to have some drinks and ran into his ex-fiancée, who later messaged him to tell him that she regretted the way they ended and how she was very hurt when she heard that we had a baby together. especially with it being so soon after their relationship. Dave wouldn't talk to me about how he felt, and when I asked him, he just brushed me off or switched the conversation onto a topic about our son that he knew would distract me. I noticed Dave pulling away from me and how our relationship became a bit awkward and strained after their run-in and her message, because I know he still has feelings for her and I am afraid that he might feel trapped with me and our son. I also noticed that the drama with my family has made Dave and his family less patient with me and my son. During Mother's Day, I overheard a few of his family members make comments to Dave about me being at their family barbecue, since I was just my son's mom and not really part of the family. Dave just shrugged and said I didn't have anyone else to spend the day with. With how tense things have been, I've been thinking about moving out and back into my place. I stayed with Dave at his place after I gave birth, but now that our son is slightly older and I am healed, I want to give Dave back some space so that he can start dating again if he wants to, and to give him back some more bachelor time when I have our son. I want to find a way to approach me moving out and us making a co-parenting plan without making things more awkward or possibly ruining the relationship I have with Dave and his parents. I don't want them to feel like I'm not grateful or anything, but I do want to go back to work and get my life back on track so that I can provide my portion of needs for my son and not want to depend on his family for more than appropriate. Update 2. I've been trying my best to not check my phone or Reddit since I'm honestly a little overwhelmed right now. I will let you all know that I did talk to Dave and he was against moving out. He also wasn't willing to talk about the situation / how he's been acting after running into his ex, and said I was bringing up something that didn't matter since we were talking about me wanting to move out. I haven't said anything about what I heard during Mother's Day, and I don't think I'm going to mention it since I feel really bad that it was meant to be a private conversation. So I don't think anyone meant anything bad. During our conversation, Dave let me know that maybe I'm just overthinking or overreacting and that I shouldn't make big decisions like moving out. He also talked about how because our son is a preemie, he'd prefer if one of us was a stay-at-home parent until he turned 2 to 3 years old so he could catch up with his peers, and then once he started prec, then we could go back to work again. But I feel like he's been trying to avoid me since the conversation, but I could also be overthinking like he said. But after reading some comments, I do feel like I'm valid in the way I feel, but I am also not sure anymore. I want to do what's best for my son. I know people already think I'm so dumb and that I shouldn't have had him, but I am trying to be better for my son. I feel like he's my only family left, and I really want to try to do what's best for him. Now on to the next story. Story 7. Husband said he'd rather sleep with my best friend than me, so I lied that she liked him back, set up a double date, and watched her husband break his nose when he tried to hit on her. So, a little context before I get into what happened. The three of us went to high school together, but my best friend's husband met her at work. My husband, Jacob, 28M, and I, 28F, got married 3 years ago after 2 years of being together. My best friend, Nicole, 28F, and I have been friends ever since we were in kindergarten. We've been friends for a really long time and are still going strong. She married Travis, 30M, a year ago after being in a relationship for about 3 years. Jacob wasn't friends with me and Nicole back in high school, but we were acquaintances. Jacob and I only met at the high school reunion we had a couple of years after graduation, and we became friends there. Nicole had to skip that one because she was sick. He asked me out on a couple of dates, and we realized we had a lot more in common than we'd thought. That's how we got into a relationship, and we were relatively happy. Our married life was great, too, and we'd even gone out on several double dates with Nicole and Travis. Things were going so well until about a week ago when my husband and I were having a night in, and we'd polished off an entire bottle of wine because we'd had a really busy week and wanted to celebrate. Just for fun, we decided to play that game where we named 5 celebrities who we could hook up with without our partner getting mad at us. I named 5 celebrities, but he was able to name only 4. I was teasing him about it and told him that he needed to name 5 or else I'd win this one. Of course, there was no winning or losing in this game. I was just messing with him. But he thought about it for a while and then blurted out that he'd definitely love to get with Nicole sometime or the other if he knew that I wouldn't get mad. I was shocked and didn't know what to say at the time and tried to laugh it off since he was chuckling as well. But in spite of being drunk as hell, I couldn't find the humor in what he'd said and couldn't just laugh it off. So I asked him if he was being serious and informed him that he could only name celebrities because it's unlikely that we'll ever even get to meet them, and if he names real people, that just makes it weird. He told me that he was serious and even confessed that he'd had a crush on Nicole even when we were in high school. He didn't even think that he should have stopped there and went on to say that he used to think of me as her less attractive sidekick back then. I could just stare at him open-mouthed because whatever he was telling me was just so disrespectful and mean. I guess he'd just forgotten that I was his wife now and continued to talk about how he'd love to have a day out with a woman like Nicole and just how lucky Travis is. I'd had enough that night, so I just left the room without a word and went to the bedroom and went to sleep. I was really upset, but I was also very drunk, so I fell asleep quickly, hoping that I'd forget all of this in the morning. But I didn't. In the next morning, I decided to confront Jacob about what he'd said the previous night at breakfast. He seemed pretty unaffected by last night, even though I was nursing a terrible hangover. When I asked him if he'd actually meant what he'd said about Nicole last night, he told me that it was all true and didn't even seem sorry about it. He wasn't even embarrassed to admit it and just continued to have his cereal, and I was getting pissed off because this guy was supposed to be my husband, yet he had no shame in admitting that he'd always been more attracted to my best friend. I decided to ask him if he still found Nicole attractive, and without missing a beat, he told me that he did. That was the last straw for me, and I lashed out at him over it, but instead of apologizing, he doubled down on what he was saying and told me that I needed to just accept it and move on. He did love me more than her and believed that I was his soulmate, but he still did think that Nicole was objectively more attractive than me, and if it came down to physical attraction, then he'd pick her over me any day. And he expected me not to be offended at that because what's more normal than your husband telling you that if it came down to it, he'd rather sleep with your best friend than you? We got into a really ugly fight, and he left for work after telling me that I was being petty and childish. He said that he wasn't going to sugarcoat the truth for me, and if he didn't find me as attractive as Nicole, then he wasn't going to say it just to boost my ego and make me feel better about myself. He even tried to gaslight me by saying that if I hadn't wanted an honest answer the other night, then I shouldn't have brought up that stupid game at all and I should have just let it be when he wasn't able to name 5 people, as if I was the problem here. I didn't go to work that day and just kept breaking into tears throughout the day. I wanted to talk to someone about this, but ironically, I couldn't talk to the only 2 people I usually share everything with, my husband and my best friend. So I chose not to say anything and tried to pretend that I was fine. When Jacob came back home, we didn't speak after the fight and then for the next 2 days because he was convinced that he hadn't done anything wrong and was just being honest here. On the 3rd day, I finally broke down and ended up telling Nicole everything. She'd noticed that my behavior was all off and I sounded perturbed. So for 2 days she kept asking me if I was all right and was very concerned about me in general. I just couldn't hold it together anymore and told her the truth. She was furious on my behalf and was about to call Jacob up and give him a piece of her mind. But I stopped her. I just didn't know what to do at all, and I definitely didn't want her to confront him just yet because I wasn't ready. But Nicole pushed me to realize that what Jacob had said to me was really messed up and that I needed to teach him a lesson and then leave this marriage because it was very clear that he didn't respect me at all. She was right, of course, but I didn't know what to do to teach him a lesson. It was only when Nicole mentioned how she wished Jacob would have said something like this while Travis was around and it would have been a sight to see because he'd beat up a guy before who tried to catcall Nicole that I realized I could just do exactly that. I asked her if she'd be okay with me arranging a double date with them in the next couple of days and having Jacob bring this up in front of Travis. She agreed readily, and we had a good laugh thinking about what would have happened to Jacob if he said crap like this on the date. By then, the hurt had dissipated and had been replaced by anger, so I decided to go ahead with this plan of mine and even apologized to Jacob for overreacting even though I didn't mean a word of it. I just wanted him to say yes to the double date. I made it up to him with his favorite dinner, and he actually had the audacity to tell me that he was glad I'd finally come to my senses, and he agreed to the date. The plan that Nicole and I had come up with was reckless enough, and I also added fuel to the fire by lying to my husband a day before the date by telling him that I'd learned from Nicole that even she'd had a crush on him for the longest time and would love to go out with him someday, so he should probably bring that up on the date. He seemed taken aback and asked if Travis was okay with it, and I lied and said that he didn't care because it was just a date and he didn't mind. He seemed very pleased with that and was smiling from ear to ear when I told him that, which lessened my guilt by a lot, to be honest. Yesterday, we finally left for the date in the evening, and Nicole and I had picked one of the finest restaurants in the city. We were all dressed up, and it was supposed to be a great day for all of us. Nicole and I were excited because finally Jacob was going to get whacked, and we believed that he desperately needed that. So, after some small talk and a couple of glasses of wine, I finally brought up the game that we'd been playing the other day as a way to steer the conversation where we wanted it to go. Once again, I named 5 celebrities and asked Jacob to go next. He was confident enough to name Nicole this time without any prompting because of what I had led him to believe the day before about Nicole feeling the same way about him and Travis not giving a damn. Unfortunately, neither of those things were true, and as soon as he named Nicole, she pretended to be shocked, and so did I. We threw him under the bus there. When I took a look at Travis, he was already fuming. He's a pretty buff guy, so it was definitely intimidating, but Jacob was unfazed and continued to smile at Nicole. Travis addressed it first and told him that he needed to apologize to everyone at the table, and then we would end this double date. So Jacob had a chance to read the room and do the right thing, but as usual, he did the exact opposite of it and still chose to believe my lies despite the proof of it being untrue being right in front of his face in the form of an angry Travis and a shocked Nicole. Yet he chose to answer back, saying that he wasn't going to apologize because he knew that the feelings were mutual. He even decided to take it a notch higher and said that now that everything was out in the open, he and Nicole didn't need to push down their feelings for each other anymore and pretend like there was no tension there because now Travis and I couldn't do anything. Unfortunately, Travis most definitely could do a lot of things, and out of anger, he immediately grabbed Jacob by the collar from across the table and pulled him up to a standing position. And before we even had time to react, there was a loud thump, after which I only remember Jacob being knocked down and the restaurant authorities escorting all of us out. Nobody called the cops because the restaurant didn't want any bad press, which was lucky for us. There was a lot of blood afterwards, and from what I know, Jacob had a broken nose, but he still had the audacity to continue the brawl outside the restaurant. He tried to taunt Nicole and me by calling us cowards because by then he'd put 2 and 2 together and realized that we'd come up with this plan only to humiliate him and only left when Travis warned him that one more word from him would land him in the hospital for a good few days. After that, I didn't go home and instead went to a hotel nearby. They dropped me off, and while in the car, we explained everything to Travis. We thought he'd be a little miffed that we hadn't involved him in this plan of ours, but he told us that he was glad we hadn't informed him beforehand or else he might not have punched Jacob since he doesn't like getting into fights unless it's something serious. But he told us that Jacob deserved this and he wasn't sorry about it at all. He dropped me off, and they went home after dinner since we hadn't been able to eat at the restaurant. After about 2 hours, just before I was about to crash, I received a text from Jacob saying that I was an awful person for doing what I did. He complained that he had to go to the ER all on his own since his nose was broken and he'd had to get it plastered. He said that my decision to screw with him just to get back at him for merely saying that he found Nicole attractive was disgusting and that he wanted a divorce as soon as possible. According to him, what I did was unacceptable, and he thought that it was psychotic and juvenile of me to concoct a plan to get him beaten up by a guy twice as big as him. I felt a little bad that he had to deal with the ER on his own because I know blood and hospitals freak him out. I didn't respond to his text last night because I was too tired to even think about anything else. So I just went to sleep without much delay. I was still riding the high of watching Jacob get punched and didn't think that I'd done anything wrong. But now that I've woken up and I've also sobered up, I realized that what I did was definitely kind of messed up. He was right, it was juvenile of me and Nicole to sit and plot against him just to watch him make a total fool out of himself and then get punched right in the face. I think we went a little overboard and did something very high schoolish. I'm not happy about it anymore. But I'm also not sure if he was in the right here either. I mean, he did say a lot of things that were just not cool. Not only did he admit that he finds Nicole hot right in front of her husband and his own wife, but he actively tried to get with her while we were around. I know he only said those things because I'd let him believe that Nicole liked him back. But even then, it was crazy because that meant that these had been his true feelings toward her all along. And I still can't forget the fact that he called me her less attractive sidekick. That's obviously got to sting coming from your own husband. I know the marriage is over, but I don't know if I owe him an apology for doing what I did. I do think what I did was petty and kind of overkill, but the things he said last evening kind of made it seem like he deserved it. So, AITA for lying to my husband and letting him hit on my best friend just to get him beaten up by her husband? Update 1. Okay, I went through the comments on my original post and I'll admit it, I messed up big time. Most of you guys said that I was the asshole, and I know it's true. What my husband said was disgusting, but what Nicole and I did was super juvenile as well. We didn't even take Travis' feelings into consideration and kind of used him and his anger just to humiliate and hurt Jacob. We were actually counting on him losing his temper even though we knew that he had to work hard to bring it under control, and made a total mockery out of it, which was very, very insensitive of us. I guess I was just acting out of spite and didn't give anything much thought, and neither did Nicole. I'm embarrassed now that I'm thinking about what we did with a clear mind, and so is Nicole. So we really do think that we owe Jacob an apology because he did get physically hurt, and like many of you said, there might be a chance that he might press charges or something. It's been 3 days and it hasn't happened yet, but that doesn't mean it won't. So just to be on the safe side, Nicole and I are going to apologize to him. But I'm still leaving him. It's going to be hard, but I know I have to do this. It's the right thing to do. We're also going to apologize to Travis, obviously, because we know that we took undue advantage of his weakness, and I think I painted a really bad image of him here. He's not a bad guy, honestly. He's just had a rough time with his anger, but he's still going to therapy to deal with it, and it's improved a lot since when he was a teen delinquent. He'd never hurt a fly unless it posed a threat to him, and tries to avoid getting violent as much as he can. He even gave Jacob a chance to apologize and only got mad when he didn't and continued to creep his wife out. And to be fair, I think that anyone would have lost it by then. Also, the incident that Nicole was telling me about where he'd beaten up a guy for catcalling her was from several years ago when they just started dating, and he'd just given him a black eye. Like I said, he wouldn't hurt anyone who doesn't totally deserve it. I'm not trying to defend violence in general, but sometimes you have to do something about certain situations where words just don't seem to cut it. Update 2. Hi everyone. So Nicole and I tried to apologize to Jacob today, but it was not well received. I went back home with her to collect my things and bring some fresh clothes with me to the hotel. He let me in, but he looked really unhappy about it and didn't say a word to either of us the entire time that we were there. His nose was still in bandages, and I did feel guilty about it because he was visibly in a lot of pain. We packed in silence, and I decided to apologize right before we were about to leave. I told him that I wanted to apologize for being so harsh and tricking him, and I thought he'd apologize to me and Nicole as well for saying all that crap that he did. But instead of that, he told me to leave and that he wasn't interested in our apologies now that the damage was already done. He told us to be grateful that he hadn't pressed charges against Travis, and said that both of us should count ourselves lucky that he'd even expressed any interest in either of us at all, because both of us were nothing compared to the women he'd been with before us. So that was a little weird, but we were too shocked to say anything, and he continued to rant about how he'd given us both a chance, but we'd both blown it. So now our apologies meant nothing to him, because no matter what we said, he wasn't going to take me back, and he definitely wasn't going out with Nicole anymore. I tried to tell him that we weren't here to ask for a second shot to be with him, and he was delusional for even thinking that that's what the apology was for, but he slammed the door shut right in our faces. I guess it was our fault for believing that he'd have turned into a decent human being all of a sudden. That clearly didn't happen, and I'm not surprised either. Even when we were in a relationship and throughout our marriage, he'd talk freely about his hot coworkers or cute women he'd meet, but I never thought much of it since it wasn't like he was acting on it, so no harm, no foul. I had the misconception that he told me all about his interactions with other women because that's how secure I was, but turns out it had nothing to do with me and everything to do with his own ego and the fact that he thought he was God's gift to earth and wanted me to be grateful that he was married to me in spite of the million other choices that he apparently thinks he has. But at least Nicole and I did our part and apologized for screwing up. But he's in over his head, so his rejecting our apology is not something we can help. Our conversation with Travis went a lot better, and in fact, he insisted that we didn't need to apologize at all because he would gladly whack any other disrespectful guy the same way because that's the only way they learn. He even said that if his parents couldn't teach him to respect his wife and other women, then he'd be more than happy to take that job up and teach him in his own way, which I thought was kind of cool of him. Nevertheless, we did apologize to him for taking advantage of him and inadvertently trying to rile him up just for our entertainment, and he accepted it. That was it, no further drama. So that was all. And now I'm just looking for a lawyer to deal with the impending divorce. I don't know how I'm feeling about any of this, but I know I'll get through it as long as I have my friends and family with me. It's just going to be a pain to meet him during the divorce proceedings, but I'll be fine, I guess. Update 3. Hi, so I filed for divorce a couple of days ago, and Jacob was served yesterday. This morning, I received a text from him telling me that I was going to regret this, but since I'd already filed for divorce, he wasn't going to stop me. He told me to come back and collect everything else that belonged to me, like all the knickknacks, photo albums, and other miscellaneous things that I owned but didn't bring with me because I hadn't found an apartment yet and I was still living in the hotel. He told me to get it done by the end of this week, or he'd either give it away to charity or just dump it in the trash. So I've had a word with Nicole and will be moving in with her temporarily, and she's been kind enough to let me keep all my belongings in her storeroom until I'm able to find accommodation for myself. I'm so grateful for her, I swear. I know Jacob has been talking crap about me to all our common friends, but he doesn't realize that he's the one who comes off as a total clown who hit on his wife's best friend and then got beaten up by her husband. Most people have reached out to me to tell me I'm doing the right thing and wished me luck because of his story. So he's doing me a favor without even knowing it, and his disrespect and pettiness don't even bother me anymore because I know he's just a total loser and I'm inherently better than him. Now on to the next story. Story 8. Syl purposely spilled coffee on my wedding dress because her best friend was my husband's ex. When her parents finally sided with me, she faked going missing for attention. Hi, so I recently got into a bit of a tiff with my sister-in-law, and nobody from the family is speaking to her anymore because of what happened. For context, my sister-in-law, whom I will refer to as Amelia, 26F, has never liked me, 28F. I have been with her brother, Andy, 28M, for 4 years now, and she's always been against me because she thinks that I'm the one that ruined her best friend's chances of ending up with her brother. She and her best friend, Emma, 26F, have been inseparable since middle school, and I personally think it's probably because nobody else could tolerate them, so they just stuck to each other. I know for a fact that Emma has always had a huge crush on Andy, and they even dated for a couple of years when he was in college. They mostly had an on and off relationship, which he ended a couple of months before he was supposed to graduate because he wanted to focus on his future. Andy has told me several times that he had always made it very clear to Emma that they were just not compatible. On Amelia's insistence, he had tried to give their relationship a chance, but it hadn't worked out. They were just very different people. But for some reason, even after it had been made clear to her that they were not compatible and he was not interested anymore, she continued to wait for him and flirt with him and stuff. After Andy graduated from college, he started living independently and did not move back home. So he started to see less of both Amelia and Emma. After he had ended his relationship with Emma, he did not date anybody for a couple of years because he wanted to focus on his work, but she took that as a sign that he was still interested in her and continued to try and talk to him, even though he would only make small talk and ignore her if she tried to talk about their relationship. A couple of years after his graduation, when he had been working for a couple of years, he finally started dating again, and that broke Emma's heart. Amelia gave him a really hard time for it because, in her opinion, there was nobody more perfect for her brother than her best friend. It didn't matter what Andy wanted. She just kept forcing her opinions onto him and even fought with him over this several times. And then, finally, he met me through a couple of friends and we started going out together. A couple of months after we met, he introduced me to his family, and ever since that happened, Amelia had pretty much decided that she was just never going to like me. She didn't even care what kind of a person I was or if I was actually a good match for her brother or not. She just knew that I was not Emma, and that was enough for her to dislike me. The first time that we met, her behavior around me was very odd, and when I asked Andy about it, he explained everything to me. So after that, I did not expect her to be nice to me, and neither did I try to be friends with her. I have also met Emma several times over the course of our relationship because, just like me, she's also considered a part of the family since she has been Amelia's best friend for so many years. Both of them, when they are together, are extremely catty, and Emma even makes it a point to shoot us dirty looks whenever she sees me with Andy. But it hardly mattered to me because I knew that he was happy with me, and that's all that I cared about. So, for the past 4 years, we have only been ignoring the two of them. Recently, even when we got engaged, Amelia was the only person who did not congratulate us, but we still invited her to the wedding because we did not want to start a family feud. Also, because she is the darling daughter of the family and has always been treated like a princess, it was natural for her to be spoiled and entitled and act all bratty like that. We mostly just ignored her behavior since it's not like it has ever affected us on a personal level. Besides, my in-laws had literally requested me on more than one occasion to overlook everything. Her behavior towards me and her friendship with Emma, and still invite her to the wedding because they would really hate for this to become a big deal, and they told me that she was just being immature. So for their sake, we decided to invite her since, unlike their daughter, they had always been nice to me, and Andy and I did not really see the harm in at least inviting her to appease his parents because we were pretty sure that given the circumstances, she would not accept our invitation since she would probably want to stand with Emma. But to our surprise, she decided to accept and even reached out to us and thanked us for inviting her, saying that she was finally getting around to accepting me and the family because at this point she couldn't really help Emma's heartbreak, and she needed to think about her family as well. Of course, her response to being invited wasn't exactly ideal since she had mentioned Emma quite a lot of times, but it was still a start. So Andy and I were quite pleased about how the situation had turned out. My in-laws were also quite happy that things were working out with their kids now. But our happiness was short-lived because on the day of the wedding, she did something totally unforgivable. So, about an hour before the ceremony was supposed to start, I was getting my makeup touched up, and I was already in my wedding dress. My bridesmaids, my mother-in-law, my mom, and Amelia were all sitting around in my room. Basically, all my female friends and family were in one place. At some point, Amelia offered me an iced coffee, and I agreed without really thinking about it. She came towards me with the cup, and then while handing it to me, she suddenly flipped her wrist, and all of a sudden, the entire front of my dress had coffee and ice on it. The lower part of my dress had been spared for the most part and only had a couple of droplets here and there, but it was my bodice that had taken most of the damage. Everybody was obviously horrified, and as soon as it had happened, I got to my feet and started trying to get it all out of me, but even I knew that it was pointless. Amelia started apologizing to me profusely, but I could see the smirk on her face no matter how much she tried to hide it. I knew that her apologies were just for show. Before I knew it, I was screaming at her because I had really lost my temper. I was obviously very upset, and I started crying after some time. But thankfully, everybody else came to my rescue, got the dress off of me, and since we still had an hour to go before the ceremony, they decided to take it to the laundry room and try to do some damage control. I just kept sobbing in my room even while they were trying to get the dress off of me, and I just kept hoping that the stains would not be noticeable during the ceremony and that the hotel staff would be able to help me out. Only my mother-in-law, my mom, and Amelia had stayed back in the room, and she kept apologizing, but I could hear it in her voice that she didn't really mean it and that she was actually enjoying the show. I had asked her to leave several times while screaming at her in the aftermath of the incident, but she refused to go away and sat in my room even after everything that she had done. The kind of audacity that she had to continue to sit in my room and watch me cry after what she had done was making me even more upset, and I was not even able to verbalize it because I was sobbing so hard. But thankfully, at that point, my mother-in-law spoke up for me, and I guess that's when Amelia finally figured out that she was in trouble because at that point even her own mother was not with her, and having the status of the darling daughter was not going to save her from the consequences of her actions. After my bridesmaids had left the room with the dress, and my mom had been sitting by my side to try and comfort me, my mother-in-law finally spoke up and asked her daughter if she had flipped her wrist to spill the coffee on me on purpose. She sounded very serious, and Amelia tried to deny it, but I immediately called out her bluff and I told her that I had been sitting quite still and I had seen her flip her wrist on purpose. She then started to argue with me, but my mother-in-law told her to keep her mouth shut and said that, given the situation, she thought that it would be for the best if Amelia left because it was clear that she was not happy about the wedding. So far, my mother-in-law had tried to keep things peaceful, but it was evident that Amelia was not going to allow that to happen. She told her that she had specifically requested me to invite her to the wedding in spite of her behavior because she thought that she could act like an adult for once and be happy for her brother. But she had been a fool to expect that from somebody as spoiled, entitled, and bratty as Amelia, and she didn't even have anybody else to blame for how she had turned out because they had made the mistake of always trying to be gentle with her instead of just being brutally honest with her. However, after what had just happened, my mother-in-law could no longer take her daughter's side in good conscience and asked Amelia to get out of the room and told her not to show up at the wedding, or she would have security escort her out. I was very upset, but even I was so shocked by the way my mother-in-law was speaking to Amelia that I had literally stopped crying to watch what was going on, since I don't think Amelia had ever been spoken to like this. Of course, it took her by shock as well, but she recovered relatively quickly and immediately started arguing with her mother. She tried to make it sound like I was playing the victim and that the coffee thing had been an accident, but everyone in the room, even my makeup artists, could attest to the fact that she had spilled it on me on purpose. Amelia started trying to blame me, but my mother-in-law made it very clear that she had been invited in the first place as a favor to my in-laws because they had put in a request for her so that there was no family drama, and now she had changed her mind, and she wanted Amelia to leave because had it not been for my in-laws, she probably wouldn't have been invited in the first place. After some bickering, Amelia finally got up really angrily and left the room, and my mother-in-law started apologizing to me for everything that happened so far and told me that it had been her mistake that she had ever even bothered to try and convince me to invite Amelia, especially knowing that she was a total brat and would go to any extremes to make sure that she got her way. I didn't say much in response. I was just glad that Amelia had pretty much just exposed herself, and the only people that had been on her side all along, her parents, were also turning against her now because of her disgusting behavior. After that, all we could do was just wait and watch, and I just kept my fingers crossed that by the time the dress was returned to me, it was in perfect condition. I even spoke to Andy on the phone since we were not supposed to see each other and told him everything that had happened, and he told me that he would make sure that Amelia was not going to be present at the ceremony or at the other events. He also told me that he would get all the guests to wait for me to show up and that I did not need to worry about the time. I could take as long as I needed to because he knew that the dress being perfect was really important to me, and he lived up to his word. The ceremony began about 45 minutes late since I had to get my makeup retouched again because I had been crying so hard, but by the time I showed up, my dress had been cleaned and steamed thanks to my bridesmaids and the staff at the hotel who had pretty much treated this as a laundry emergency and had treated the dress as quickly and carefully as they could, and there was no trace of any coffee on it when I finally received it back. It all went without a hitch after that, and thankfully, Amelia was nowhere to be seen. If I'm being honest, I pretty much forgot that she had even been there in the first place by the time we started dancing, and by the end of the evening, I was so overjoyed to be married to Andy that nothing else mattered to me. After dinner, my in-laws came up to me and Andy once again, and this time even my father-in-law told me that he was really sorry about whatever Amelia had done, and if he had any idea that this was going to happen, he never would have made me feel like I needed to invite her in the first place. They also told me that they had made up their minds that they were going to cut her off until she apologized to both of us. And they have stayed true to their words and haven't been speaking to Amelia ever since the wedding, which was last week. But for some reason, Amelia has decided to make this my problem and has been getting on my very last nerve trying to talk to me about all this and get me to sort it out for her. Most of her messages have been along the same lines. That I'm trying to replace her in the family, but I'll never be able to do that because I'm just not as good as her. And apparently, she knows for a fact that I'm trying to brainwash her family against her. I've already done it to Andy, and now I'm trying to do it to her parents, but I won't be able to succeed because she knows that her family will come back to her. She has even confessed that the coffee incident had not been an accident and she had done it on purpose. She even said that she only regrets that she hadn't been able to get more of it on my dress and completely ruined it so I wouldn't even have been able to get married. For the record, I have blocked her social media accounts and her phone number, so she has been using fake profiles and burner phones to text me and get on my nerves. Initially, I was just ignoring it because I really did not think that this was important enough to be discussed with anyone apart from Andy, and he had the same advice for me that I should just ignore her because getting a reaction out of me is what she wants and I don't have to play into her hands. However, 2 days back, I don't know what got into me, I decided to unblock her after she tried to text me from a fake profile once again, and I called her up so I could speak to her and put an end to this nonsense once and for all. She declined my call the first couple of times, but then she finally picked up, and I put her on blast. I cussed her out, told her that she was a loser just like Emma, and that's why they were perfect for each other, and maybe they should just get married to each other instead of trying to ruin other people's weddings. I also told her that I was not trying to take her place in the family at all because she was not even worth replacing, and she had things the other way around. It was actually I was just not terrible enough to be a replacement for somebody like her. I told her that everybody would probably be better off with her out of their lives, especially her brother and her parents since she had been nothing but a burden and an embarrassment to them all along. I told her to stop bothering me and then I finally hung up, and since then I haven't received any messages. But Emma has reached out to me and told me that apparently after that phone call, Amelia had a total breakdown and has gone MIA since then. So, ITA for causing my sister-in-law to go MIA after she tried to ruin my wedding? Update 1. So by Amelia going MIA, I meant that she hasn't been responding to anybody's calls or texts ever since I put her on blast on the phone the other day. She and Emma have been staying together ever since the wedding. Earlier, she had been staying with her parents, but after the wedding, she got kicked out of the house and moved in with Emma instead. From what I know, after that phone call, she locked herself in her room, cried for several hours, and refused to let Emma speak to her or even enter the room. The next morning when Emma woke up, she found that Amelia was gone and had even left most of her stuff behind. She had tried calling her several times but hadn't received any response and had even had their other friends try to call or text her, but she had been ignoring everyone. Emma thinks that the only way she will respond to anybody is if her parents or Andy reach out to her. But that's not going to happen. Don't get me wrong. Andy and his parents are not being heartless right now. They're just being realistic because we know for a fact that she is alive and unharmed. And that is a huge part of the reason why we don't want to reach out to her or give her any importance, because we know that this is just a stunt that she's pulling off for attention. So we feel bad for being mean to her. How do we know that for a fact? It's because as soon as her parents had heard that she had stopped responding to her friends and stuff, they decided to get in touch with a couple of their family members to find out where she was. Apparently, this is not even the first time that she has pulled off a stunt like this, because even back in high school and in college, she would often go missing for a couple of days but would usually turn up after her parents got sick and started phoning her relatives. She mostly did these things for attention after a fight so that her parents would give in and she would get her way. She would even emotionally manipulate her relatives, whoever's house she was staying at, to stay silent and not tell her parents about it. Amelia would always have a sob story prepared to manipulate her relatives, and they would always fall for it because she was very convincing. Eventually, the same thing would always happen. Her parents would start getting worried and start calling their relatives to find out if she was, and once they found out where she was, those relatives would scold her parents for not treating her well, and she would eventually turn up back at the house and have an emotional reconciliation with her family, following which she would always get whatever she had wanted in the first place and had fought for with her parents. It was extremely manipulative and twisted, but that's just how Amelia functions. So I'm not surprised. In fact, it was my in-laws who had told me not to worry or feel guilty that Amelia had gone MIA and had told me about her past shenanigans. This time, she had turned up at her aunt's place and had manipulated her aunt into believing that her parents had asked her to leave her brother's wedding for no real reason and had then kicked her out because apparently I had been brainwashing them into turning against her, and she hadn't even done anything. I don't know about her, but trying to ruin somebody's wedding dress on purpose just a couple of hours before the ceremony sounds like a good enough reason to get kicked out of the wedding to me, personally, and I don't understand why she's trying to run this narrative that I'm trying to turn her family against her. She's not even that important to me anyway. After speaking to her aunt, her parents discovered that she had been staying with them, and Amelia had told her aunt that she did not want them to find out that she was staying with her because she just needed some time and space away from her family to recover from this. But we knew what she really wanted. She just wanted to scare her family into thinking that she had actually gone missing so they would reach out to her, and she would get her way once again. That's why she had completely skipped the coffee incident while talking to her aunt about what had happened at the wedding and had made it seem like it was she who was the victim here. So naturally, when her parents called her aunt up, she started reprimanding them for treating Amelia badly and making her so upset. But my mother-in-law told her sister the truth immediately and cleared any misconceptions. They also talked about how she had been pulling off the same attention-seeking stunts over and over again ever since she was a teenager, and it was getting old now. Her parents told her aunt that now that she knew the truth, it was up to her what she wanted to do, and of course, she's getting kicked out of her aunt's house as well now. Her aunt herself has told her mother that she's asked her to leave but hasn't mentioned why. However, Emma doesn't know that and has still been texting me, telling me that I need to fix this situation before it's too late. I'm pretty sure she's trying to scare me into thinking that something terrible has happened to Amelia and they're both playing the long game. But they have no idea that we know what they are trying to do. It's her own loss that she is so predictable. But whatever, it's just sad that a grown woman feels the need to do things like this for attention. I think it would be way easier and more respectable to just admit that she messed up and let it go now. Update 2. Hi, so it's been a while since my last update, and I'm currently on my honeymoon right now. It's only the 3rd day of our honeymoon, and I'm already pretty entertained by what is happening back home. As you guys already know, in the last update I mentioned that Amelia had been staying with her aunt, but after she found out the truth about what had happened at the wedding from my in-laws, she decided to kick Amelia out. But Emma was still trying to manipulate me to believe that this was all my fault and that Amelia was missing. I started to ignore them, but I did not block her because I wanted to see if she had any other lie that she wanted to come up with. And sure enough, after Amelia got kicked out by her aunt and returned to stay with Emma, she still continued to try and manipulate me into thinking that Amelia was still gone. She kept texting me about how many days it had been since Amelia had left and how heartless we were for not even having tried to contact her yet. So, Andy and I decided to mess with her, and we asked her if she was so concerned that she should file a missing persons report, since it has been quite a few days since Amelia has left. The two of them were so stupid that they hadn't even considered this possibility, and after we sent that message, they did not say anything to us for a couple of days, and we left for our honeymoon. Today we found out that Amelia had finally shown up at her parents' house, and was demanding that they apologize to her because otherwise she was not ready to have a relationship with them. She had probably expected that they were going to get intimidated and apologize to her, but my in-laws just told her that they were not interested in even speaking to her until she apologized to me and Andy. They also told her that this entitled attitude of hers was not going to fly with them anymore, and if she wanted to cut them off, she was free to do so, and they were not even going to question it. That's when she started throwing a temper tantrum at their doorstep, and my in-laws did not even entertain it. They called the cops immediately and had her removed from the premises. She went away kicking and screaming, and I have to say they are being pretty strict with her, and I think this had to happen at some point. We are just thankful that Andy and I are not at home right now, so she can't bother us even if she wants to. Update 3. Hi, so we have returned from our honeymoon, and Andy and I had a great time. So we were not really looking forward to rejoining all the drama that was going on back home. Honestly, we just want to stay away from all of it. We don't even want her apology anymore. But anyway, I guess Amelia couldn't risk her parents staying mad at her for too long, so she decided to apologize to us. She sent us both an email saying that she was really sorry about everything, that she was only trying to be a good friend to Emma because she honestly believed that Andy and Emma were made for each other. I don't know why she believed that. Andy had made it very clear right from the beginning that he did not see a future with her. In fact, the reason that they had had an on-and-off relationship was because they were incompatible and he kept breaking up with her, but she kept guilt-tripping him into coming back to her. And I really don't think that it was anybody else's problem that Emma was obsessed with him, and if she was actually a good friend, she would have been helping Emma to move on and not ruining her brother's chances at getting with somebody he actually liked. Anyway, that's how she chose to deal with the situation, and in the email she apologized about it. But just because she apologized doesn't mean that I have to forgive her, and Andy agrees with that. So we did not contact her, but we reached out to our in-laws and we told them that we had received the apology, but we were still going to hold out on forgiving her and we needed some time to process everything because of what had happened at the wedding and even afterward. It was just not okay. My in-laws were very understanding about it, and in fact, they even told us that they were also maintaining their distance from Amelia at the moment, and she was staying with Emma. To be honest, it doesn't really matter if she meant her apology or not because the damage has already been done, and it's going to take a really long time for us to make peace with her. And if she genuinely wants us to forgive her, she has to prove to us that she's really sorry, that she didn't just say things in email for the sake of saying it because she did not want her parents to be mad at her anymore. But if she doesn't want to have a relationship with us in the future, we are fine with that as well. Honestly, we don't really care. We are just happy that we have each other, and that's all that matters to us right now. We just want to enjoy our lives and not worry about the family drama, so we are staying out of all of this. Now on to the next story. Story 9. Parents forged my signature for a $150,000 loan to fund my sister's dream wedding, and I wasn't even invited. I, 33M, recently received a phone call from the bank for the verification of identity for a loan of $150,000, which was strange because I hadn't applied for one. That's how I ended up finding out that my parents had taken a huge loan from their bank to fund my golden child sister's dream wedding. Let me just make it clear. My sister and I have never been close, and she's always been a spoiled brat. I would say that it's all my parents' fault, but honestly, she's in her late 20s right now, and I think she's had enough time to change herself, but she hasn't bothered to do so. We stopped speaking a couple of years ago and haven't really stayed in touch since then. Occasionally, when we meet at other family gatherings, we try our best to avoid each other because we never got along in the past, and it's unlikely that we'll start getting along right now anyway. I think it's very evident that my relationship with my sister has never been the best, so it's all the more insulting that my parents decided to take out a loan and falsify documents stating that I would become a co-signer for the loan, especially considering the fact that I wasn't even invited to the wedding that they were planning to fund with this loan. My sister has been with her fiancé for the past 2 years, and they got engaged a couple of months ago. I knew that I was not going to be invited, so I didn't think much about it, and neither did my parents speak to me about it. But then, last week, when I received that phone call from the bank, I caught my parents in a lie, and I decided to confront them right after the phone call. Initially, I was still willing to believe that it might have been a misunderstanding and the phone call was probably not intended for me, but that was just wishful thinking because as soon as I confronted my parents, they admitted to it. Not only did they admit to it, they also told me that as her brother, I should be looking forward to contributing to the wedding in any way that I can because it's my duty as her family. They told me that they had to take out a loan because they had taken a look at their finances, and it would be impossible for them to fund the entire wedding, which is what my sister had wanted. But they did not have the heart to decline the one request that my sister had for them to cover the expenses of the wedding. So they thought it would be for the best to take out a loan, and they needed a cosigner, so they decided to use me for that since I had a good credit score. They even justified the fact that they did not contact me because, apparently, they knew that I was already not on good terms with my sister, and asking for something like this would alert me to their plans, and then they wouldn't even be able to add me as a cosigner. So they decided to go ahead without my consent, and they didn't even care that eventually I was going to find out because by then, the loan was going to be approved. They had forged my signature and stuff and even gotten a hold of my personal details, so it was a piece of cake for them. But they hadn't counted on the bank to personally verify before they approved the application, and that's where they messed up. Obviously, after I found out what they had done, I was furious, and I told them that I was going to make sure that they paid for this. They tried to justify everything that had happened by saying that they couldn't let my sister down because this was the one thing that she wanted from them. If I'm being honest, she has wanted a lot of things in the past, and my parents have never said no to her, so I think it's not about the wedding, it's just about their inability to decline anything that she wants, even if it comes at the cost of their own integrity and dignity. Both my sister and her fiancé are working, and from what I know, they can definitely afford to have a decent wedding if they want to fund it themselves. Maybe it won't be the dream wedding that my sister has planned, which is bound to be extravagant and grand, but at least they won't have to depend heavily on my parents. And I can't even blame my sister for all of this because my parents could have just declined and told her that they need to look out for life after retirement so they can't fund her grand wedding. That's what her in-laws did, and her fiancé is still in touch with them. So I don't understand why they think that they have to bow down to the whims and fancies of a grown woman or else she's going to throw a tantrum and stop speaking to them. Anyway, that's their dynamic, and if they find it convenient for them, then who am I to complain? But as soon as they drag me into the situation, it becomes about me as well, and that's what I was not okay with. I told my parents that I was going to sue them, and I was definitely going to speak to my lawyer and take action against them for falsifying documents. At first, they still continued to insist that this was my duty since I was family, but when they realized that I was serious about my threats, they started begging me not to do anything too harsh. My mother started sobbing, which is her usual go-to move whenever things are not going her way. But my father told me that as a part of the family, it was my duty to stand by my sister and my parents when they needed me. He also said that my sister had just gotten engaged a couple of months back, and if I went through with my threats, it would reflect badly on the family, and this was not the right time to vent out my frustrations because it could impact my sister's engagement. It was a really stupid argument because it felt like he didn't even care about the fact that he had literally committed a crime and only about how this would affect my sister, and he just kept insisting on it, and it was really annoying. So I eventually just hung up after telling them that I was definitely going no contact with them and I would be taking this to court. So they had to stay prepared for the consequences of what had happened. After ending the phone call with him, I decided to speak to the bank that had called me once more and requested a copy of the terms of the loan, so I could at least find out what was going on before I spoke to my lawyer. Now, before I had read the terms of the loan, I had decided that I was just going to go no contact with my family and not go public with what was going on. I was definitely planning on taking legal action against them for what they have done because obviously it was illegal, but I had no intention of telling anyone about it because I didn't want to create drama out of something so personal since this was my family as well, and whether I liked it or not, I was related to them so it would reflect on me as well. But after reading the terms of the loan, I actually decided to make sure everyone found out what kind of people they were because it was absolutely unforgivable. The reason for that was one clause which said that all the money that had been borrowed would have to be returned within 2 years of the loan. I had an issue with that because I had been telling my parents for the past 6 months that I am planning on starting a business, and they know for a fact that I've been looking forward to it and preparing for it for a really long time now. In fact, I'm even planning on quitting my job in the next couple of months as soon as I have a couple of investors on board. Everyone knows that when you start a new business, you have to have enough money for yourself because there's no telling what might happen in the future. It's always a gamble to start something of your own no matter how much you prepare. So my parents knew about my plans, and they still went ahead and made me the co-signer of such a huge loan, not caring about whether I have my own plans or not. If they even defaulted on one payment, I would have to cough up the money required, and they did not even think that it was necessary to speak to me or get my consent before signing me up for something like this. I don't know why, but something inside just snapped, and after I went through the terms of the loan, I immediately called my lawyer and told him everything. Then I logged into Facebook and started looking for the account of the guy that my sister was engaged to, and here is where I think I might have gone a little too far. Anyway, it was not very difficult to find that account because even though we did not get along, my sister had never blocked me. So I went onto her profile and from there, I was able to find my future brother-in-law. I went to his account, typed out a message telling him everything that my parents had done and to ask my sister if she knew what was going on and if possible, break off the engagement before it is too late for him to back out of it because my family is clearly not trustworthy and he should just quit while he's ahead. Not just him, I also copied that message and sent it to his parents and a couple of people he had tagged in a bunch of family photos just so that a lot of people would know what kind of people my parents were. And if I'm being honest, I kind of believed that my sister must have had some idea that they were up to things like this, and that's why I looked up her fiancé and sent all these things to him and his family. After that, obviously, things started going very wrong for my family, not to mention the fact that I was also suing them and they were going to be answerable to the bank for the fact that they had actually committed fraud since I had never really signed those documents. So my parents definitely had a lot on their plates. I only spoke to them once a couple of days after I had sent those messages to my fiancé and spoken to my lawyer, and they were hysterical because my sister had confronted them about what they had done because apparently she did not actually know that they had roped me in without my consent. In fact, she didn't even know that they had had to take out a loan for the money that would be used to fund her wedding. Anyway, my sister confronted our parents and they got into a huge fight where she was obviously mad at them because now she would have to return all the money that she had taken from them for all the advance payments that she had made to the vendors since even though it was our parents' own money, she did not want anything to do with them anymore. And our parents were mad at her for being ungrateful, which I don't really think is as valid as her reason to be mad at them, but my parents were pretty hysterical, and they started blaming me for reaching out to her fiancé for no reason because now she's no longer speaking to them anymore. And I don't understand how this is my fault, but anyway, that's not even what I care about. I'm actually just here to ask about whether what I did with my sister was the right thing to do or not because after I sent those messages to her fiancé and his family, she reached out to me as well, saying that I had no reason to do that and if I had a problem with what was going on, I should have just sorted it out with my parents or just sued them instead of dragging her and her fiancé into it for no reason. She told me that she had no idea that our parents had done something like this, and if she had known, she never would have taken any money from them or even told them to fund her wedding. But because of my baseless assumption that she had known, I had gone out of my way to create trouble for her, and now her fiancé and his family were rethinking the entire marriage. And it was happening all because I had not even bothered to speak to her and ask her if she had known about what our parents had done. I hate to admit it, but she does have a point. I should have just spoken to her before I went ahead and contacted her fiancé because now everyone is doubting her. Like I said, when your family does something bad, it reflects badly on you as well, and I guess that's what's happening now. She also told me that even though we haven't gotten along in the past, it's not like she's a dishonest person, and I don't know about that for sure, but I'll have to admit that she doesn't really have that reputation. She is spoiled rotten to the core, entitled, and really rude, but I wouldn't say that she has a reputation of being a liar or dishonest. So for me to cast aspersions on her character and do it so convincingly that even her own fiancé and his family, who have known her for a considerable amount of time, start doubting her, that was just not right. And the only reason they are even taking it seriously is that it's coming from a source that's really close to her own family. Anyway, I'm just wondering if I did the right thing with her or not and if I should apologize. To be honest, I did not have any intentions of ruining her relationship with her fiancé. I just thought that she knew what our parents were up to, and that's why I contacted him, because I thought he should know what he's getting into, and maybe just in a little petty way, I wanted to get back at my family for being absolutely horrible to me. So AITA for telling my sister's fiancé that our parents are frauds and unnecessarily involving him in our family conflict? Update 1. So I decided to play it safe and told my sister that I genuinely did not know that she had no idea that our parents had committed a crime like this, but honestly, judging by her past behavior, I thought that maybe she knew about it and just didn't care. Nevertheless, I was sorry that she was in trouble right now, and if she wanted to, I would speak to her fiancé and reach out to him again to let him know that what I had said had come from a place of anger and that he definitely should give the relationship a chance. She hasn't responded to that yet, but at least I did what I had to. I played it safe because I did not completely take the blame on myself, because honestly, I don't think it's completely my fault. She and my parents have had a relationship like this forever, and she has always got what she wanted, so it wouldn't have been surprising if she had known about what they had done and had gone ahead with the plan, because she has never really cared about me. She can't blame me for believing that she would have encouraged this as long as she got what she wanted. At the same time, though, I guess I kind of have jumped to conclusions without speaking to her, and that was on me. So even though she doesn't entirely deserve it because she never was nice to me, I decided to apologize because getting married is a huge deal, and I wanted my conscience to be clear. But whatever, that's done now, and I'm going to be pursuing the court case against my parents as of now. Of course, the loan did not get approved, so the bank dropped the case against them, but I'm guessing the lawyer had something to do with it because he's pretty good. My lawyer is a close friend of mine, and I know for a fact that he's great as well, so I'm sure that I'm in safe hands and I'm not too worried about the procedure or even going to trial. In fact, I am hoping that it goes to trial because I think my parents should be heavily punished for what they did. I feel like all the anger and frustration that I have held within myself for years is finally coming out, and it's like a dam has burst. Honestly, I have tried my very best to be on good terms with my parents because after all, they are my family, but they proved to me that they are not worthy of it. Now, speaking of this, a lot of people had a lot of questions about why I had still bothered to keep in touch with my parents for so many years, even though I had known that for them, my sister is always going to be more of a priority as compared to me, and honestly, I didn't really have any answers for that. So that was part of the reason why I did not post any update until a week had passed. I guess I was just trying to come up with a proper explanation for why I had kept in touch with them and why I was even planning on going no contact with them instead of just exposing them in the first place. The truth is, I've always made excuses for them. Even though I was trying to do something of the sort, I just came up with some weak defense for what they had done and why I couldn't retaliate in the same manner. It's just that I'm really non-confrontational, and I've always been like this right from the beginning. When I don't like somebody or some situation, I just remove myself from that place and distance myself from those people. But with my family, I was never able to do that. I managed to achieve that with my sister, at least to a certain degree, but with my parents, they would always emotionally manipulate me every time I would try to distance myself from them. It was like they wanted the best of both. They wanted to be biased towards my sister, but they also didn't want me to abandon them, and it took me a really long time to realize that because until recently, I was ready to believe that they loved us both equally, but they were just more expressive and affectionate with my sister. The truth is, they definitely did not love us both equally. They loved my sister, and with me, it was more of an obligatory relationship. They treated me like more of a backup kid just in case things with my sister ever started going wrong, and it took me a really long time to realize that their first preference was always going to be my sister and there was nothing that I could do to change it. So there was no point in sticking around and hoping for things to get better with my parents because it was never going to happen. I had waited until I was in my early 30s for it to change, but if it hadn't happened until now, I think it's unlikely that it's going to change in the future. And anyway, at this point, I really don't think that it matters anymore. I have spent more than enough time to win my parents over and do right by them, but now I think it's about time that I started prioritizing myself first instead of thinking about how they would feel. So that's what I'm gonna do now, and that's why I'm planning on making sure that I win this thing. Update 2. So my sister's engagement got called off, and of course, she immediately decided to pin all of the blame on me. I had sent those messages to her fiancé 2 weeks ago, and I tried to make things right with her about 1 week back, and about 3 days ago in the evening, a bunch of people in the family started texting me about how my sister had just posted that she and her fiancé had decided to part ways. But they hadn't put up any reason, so they were coming to me to ask about what had happened because they wanted to gossip about it, obviously. Unfortunately for them, they didn't know that my sister had blocked me recently, so I didn't even know that they had called off their engagement. I felt a little bad about it initially, but right now, I felt like I did the right thing because the guy definitely deserves better. Whoever he was, even if he was a terrible guy himself, which he must have been if he had been with my sister for so long, he still deserved better because I don't think there is anyone worse than her. Anyway, this morning when I woke up, I was about to go make breakfast for myself when I started hearing somebody banging at my door relentlessly and constantly ringing the doorbell. Nobody really behaves like that normally, so I had guessed that it must have been someone from my family, and judging by the fact that my parents and I were going to meet in court in a couple of days, I guessed that it was probably my sister who was losing her mind because she had all the reasons to be here in the morning. I didn't even bother going to the door and shouted out from the living room that if she continued to bother me in the morning, then I would call the cops. I honestly didn't even care that her engagement had been called off. I had just woken up at that point, and I was really cranky anyway. She didn't make it any better by showing up at such a time and then trying to burst me around. So after I told her that I would call the cops, she started screaming at me and told me that I was the one who had ruined her relationship by sending those messages because now he and his entire family think that her parents are thieves and frauds and she must have been a part of their plan as well. Truth be told, she could have been very well because she was very close to our parents, but I don't know that for sure, so it was better not to say anything about that, and I just told her to leave again. But instead of just leaving, she started kicking my door, and she was going absolutely insane. So I decided to look out through the window and open the door just as her foot was about to hit it. She kind of lost her balance and fell forward, and it was absolutely hilarious, but I had to try really hard to keep myself from laughing even though I had done it on purpose. When she regained her balance, it was very obvious that she was very embarrassed about what just happened, and I had completely thrown her off her game. So she couldn't even start yelling at me once again because I had her right where I wanted. Very politely, I told her that I was sorry that she was going through so much right now, but she had never been nice to me, and that's why I believed that she knew about what our parents were up to, and that's why I had reached out to her fiancé without speaking to her first. But now what was done, and the only thing that she could do was speak to him and try to get him back. Fighting with me was not going to get her anywhere, and I hope she understood that because I really didn't want to call the cops on her and create more trouble for both her and myself. I just wanted a peaceful few days because after that, the legal procedures against our parents would start, and I just wanted to relax before that so I would be adequately prepared. After that, I thought she was going to leave, but she just started looking even angrier, and she told me finally that she had actually known about what our parents were doing with the loan and how they had made me the cosigner without my consent, and she had no issues with that. But the stupid bank had decided to contact me to verify instead of just automatically approving the loan, and that threw their entire plan into jeopardy. Even right now, the reason her fiancé had actually broken up with her was because she had told him the truth because he couldn't understand why she was still keeping in touch with her parents after everything that had happened if she didn't approve of what they had done. So eventually, she was forced to tell the truth that the so-called fight that she had had with her parents was a staged one so that I would feel guilty and would at least go easy on them. But now that she realized that she stood to gain absolutely nothing, she did not see the point of lying anymore, and she had already lost her fiancé. She didn't care about anything else, so she thought that she might as well tell me the truth, and that's why I think that I don't need to regret anything that I did. Everyone deserves everything that was coming to them, and I'm going to make sure that I don't go easy on my parents at all. It's just really sad how they failed both their children, and now neither me nor my sister seem to care about them in the slightest. But whatever, this was a long time coming, and I'm glad that we are finally getting to face off right now. I'm also happy that my sister finally told me the truth, so I know that my entire family is rotten. Update 3. Hi, so 3 weeks have passed since my last update, and I'm really glad to inform you guys that my parents have decided to come to an out-of-court settlement with me. Obviously, it's going to be a lot of money, and we are still negotiating with our lawyers about how much they want to pay me exactly for me to drop the lawsuit against them. But one thing for sure, they're going to be paying for it. I wish there could have been a way for me to get back at my sister as well. But honestly, I'm not interested in revenge anymore because I think she got screwed over enough when her fiancé left her because from what I know, she has decided to skip town. I'm not even joking. 1 week after her fiancé dumped her, and they announced that they were separating, a bunch of my family members and a couple of her friends told me that she had decided to leave everything behind and move to Colorado. It was a weird and sudden move, but the few friends who knew what I had done decided to blame me for it and told me that I was going to be punished for what I had done. Well, shiver me timbers, I can't wait. But the bottom line is that at least the situation with my parents is coming to an end, and I wouldn't say that it's been sorted out, but at least I'm going to get some closure, and I'm going to be able to move on because having to see them again and again was eating away at me, and now it's finally coming to an end. It feels really weird knowing that I'm probably not going to be seeing them again anytime soon. Most of the family has no idea what has happened between us, and I intend on keeping it that way, but I know for sure that whenever they're going to be attending any family events, I'm not going to be there. Only a couple of close cousins of mine know what's really going on, and they have told me that they want to make sure that if they host any family gatherings, they don't invite my parents, so I know that I wouldn't have to see them unless I run into them by accident. And weirdly enough, it feels a little empty, but I'm going to move on and I'm going to get over it. And now that the legal situation has come to an end, I'm going to quit my job, and since I'm going to be getting a lot of money, I'm going to start my business immediately. I don't have to wait for anything, and from now on, it's just onwards and upwards. Now on to the next story. Story 10. Boyfriend left me right after my cancer diagnosis. Then I found out he had a fiancée. Years later, I'm a guest speaker at a university while he's still working as a security guard. When I was 21, I dated a guy who was too old for me. Kevin was 37, an older student in my university program. I'd just gotten out of a bad relationship and thought Kevin was great. Of course, it was red flags all over the place, but I was so naive back then that stupid me didn't question this. Kevin and I dated for 6 months. He quickly told me that he loved me and asked me pretty aggressively to move to his home city to be with him after graduation. Great, right? Still ignoring the red flags. Except in my last semester, I was diagnosed with cancer and my world kind of fell apart after that. The day I got my diagnosis, Kevin made out with another woman at a party in front of me and I left the party in tears. He broke up with me that night by email, saying that we weren't a good fit anymore because of my impending medical emergency, that he was only with me because he took pity on me after the end of my previous abusive relationship, and by the way, all our friends thought I was annoying and no one liked me. I felt punched in the gut. My memories of that week are a blur. I had to drop out in the middle of the semester and get a medical leave of absence with the university. In the meantime, Kevin would follow me around campus demanding to know why I wouldn't talk to him and that I forgive him. I remember looking at him like he was insane. So, you're apologizing for what you did? I asked. Of course not. I didn't do anything wrong, he answered. But it's not fair that you're angry at me like this. I told him to go to hell and just focused on getting my paperwork squared away and moving back home for what became a lot of chemo. Honestly, this period of my life was a nightmare and I don't like thinking about it. I became suicidal and was diagnosed with depression, so I was seeing a psychiatrist while getting chemo. I lost most of my friends because I guess people didn't know how to deal with my illness. A few stuck by me, and those people are not only still my friends today, but now I even work with some of them. In the months after I left school, Kevin would badger me over text, saying he didn't know what happened between us and demanding again that I forgive him. I was in the middle of more chemo, so I told him I forgave him just so he'd leave me alone. As soon as I forgave him, he vanished and I never heard from him again. I blocked him on Facebook just to be sure he couldn't slink back. Later that year, between chemo, I run into this strange woman at a university event off campus. I've never met her before, have no idea who she is. A bunch of students and alumni are having dinner together and she's talking about her fiancé. Guess who it is? Kevin, of course. I'm confused because a few months of dating is a short time to know someone before you get engaged. But what do I know since Kevin was very fast in telling me he loved me and asking me to move in with him? But when I ask how long they've been together, she says something crazy like 3 years. At this point, I'm in total shock and realize Kevin was having an affair with me, that our whole time together was a lie. I had no idea. I left in a daze and cried in the parking lot. In hindsight, I should have warned this woman, but at the time I was in shock, sick, not interested in starting drama at a table full of strangers, and I was exhausted. I thought later of finding her on Facebook, but I didn't know her name and I worried telling her would start another round of harassment from Kevin, so I dropped it. So the good news is, I'm obviously still here and happily in remission. 2 years after leaving school, I finally felt human again and went back to finish my degree. By then, I was doing really good, made new friends, finished therapy, started my career. Life is totally different now. I'm well known in my field and have been invited back to my university as a guest of honor. My professors want me to speak to the students and I'll have a chance to network with other visiting alumni who are a big deal in my industry. It's an amazing opportunity and I was looking forward to it. Only problem is I saw Kevin's on the guest list and so is a woman sharing his last name who I assume is his now wife. When I saw it, my heart sank. The guest list is small, maybe 50 alumni, so we're bound to run into each other. I can't not go because this event is important and I already promised I'd be there. Plus, I don't want to avoid doing things out of fear of running into this a-hole from my past. How do I handle running into Kevin again? Do I treat him like a stranger? What if he tries hugging me like we're old friends? That's something he would do. I also have no clue if I should say something to his wife. I don't want to open this can of worms from my past. I'm losing sleep over this and don't know what to do. Update. Well, thanks for your feedback, guys. Wanted to give you an update. So, something I failed to mention in my last post is that my mom used to teach at my alma mater before she recently retired. She didn't know about my brief relationship with Kevin years ago. After writing my post, I decided to share with her everything that happened. Mom immediately got this weird look on her face and said she knew exactly who I was talking about because she used to teach in my department. She said, "I don't think Kevin will be a problem for you." When I asked why, she said, "Trust me, you'll see. That guy is kind of a loser." So I went to the event and it was amazing. I took some of the advice here and brought a girlfriend so I would never be alone in case Kevin tried to pull something. I met a bunch of alumni and ran into a couple people who I lost touch with when I got sick. Everybody were thrilled to hear how well I'm doing and my speech got an ovation when I was done. Anyway, Kevin showed up with his wife. I don't know how to say this without sounding mean, but he's gotten fat and is going bald. I was surprised at how old he looked until someone told me he's almost 50 now, which means he lied to me when we were dating and said he was younger than he really was. Also, I heard from old classmates that Kevin is still studying for his degree plus working nights as a security guard. Now, Kevin was the only person at the event who avoided me. It was obvious. I thought he was going to avoid me all night until I accidentally found myself alone for 30 seconds, which is when he nervously approached me to congratulate me. I smiled, said thanks, and kept moving. He tried cracking a dumb joke to me later, but I just ignored him, which seemed to frustrate him. Overall, I just spent the night focused on the people around me and forgot he existed. Interestingly, he managed to repeatedly piss off a bunch of people, including his wife and one of the deans, throughout the night with stupid comments. It got so bad that people started a running joke about what an insensitive a-hole Kevin was. I'm so glad I went and didn't allow one jerk from my past to make me hide. I had a great time and was surprised at how unafraid I felt when I saw Kevin again. The memories from that time of my life were so traumatic, but now he's just some jackass I once knew. I'm not sure now WTF I ever saw in him or why I was ever scared of him. Oh, and by the way, I recently started a great new job that came with a big raise, which means I'll have my student loans paid off this year. Life is good. Thanks for your help, Reddit. Edit. 2 things I wanted to add. An acquaintance recently told me that apparently Kevin and his now wife were in an open relationship for a long time, including while he and I were together, and that she closed the relationship again a few years ago because she got annoyed. I can only imagine the shenanigans. I feel better knowing he didn't cheat on her even though he still cheated on me, and of course he didn't tell me about his wife at all, whatever. My favorite part of the evening. I blocked Kevin on Facebook years ago, so he's had no updates whatsoever on my life, including the fact that I go by my birth name now. In college, everybody called me by a nickname, but no one's used it now in years, so all night he kept calling me by this super old nickname. People kept looking at him like he was crazy and asking, "Why are you calling her that?" And Kevin got super frustrated because he realized everybody was in on some joke that he didn't understand. No one would clue him in. Comment where OP has replied. Ashley, oh, this update gives me life. I'm so happy to hear of your success. Congratulations and well done. So glad you were able to finally move on from this idiot. You are clearly two very different people. OP. It's so obvious now that the only reason we were even together was because I was young and naive. Now that I'm almost 30, he doesn't make any sense to me. It's so weird and creepy. Now on to the next story. Story 11. Husband and his family rejected our newborn daughter because she looked nothing like him. My 24F husband, 31M, and I have 3 children. Our sons look exactly like him. Dark skin and dark eyes and hair. But our daughter doesn't. She looks exactly like my great-grandparents. Really pale, blonde, and green-eyed. But apparently he didn't think it was possible that our daughter could look like my great-grandparents, and from the moment when he saw her, he told me he wanted a paternity test. At first, I refused because I felt it was humiliating and because I didn't think it was necessary because I never cheated on him and I hoped he would trust me. But he didn't, and for the first 2 months of our daughter's life, he made my life hell. He didn't want to hold her, even if she cried desperately while I was doing something else. He never woke up at night to help me with her. He never helped me with anything, and that hurt me so much, because with our boys he was completely different. He helped me all the time with absolutely everything, and he was always there for me after giving birth. But this time, he left me alone, and it was the worst experience of my life. I have no family here, and his entire family, from the moment they saw my daughter, turned their backs on me. I don't have any friends here either, so it was just my daughter and me. She is a colicky baby, so it was very difficult for me to do everything alone and on top of that, help with our sons. I decided to do the paternity test because one day his entire family came to our house to celebrate my son's birthday, and no one spoke to me, and they didn't want to include my daughter in the photos that my in-laws took of all the grandchildren. So I knew it was stupid to keep waiting for them to come to their senses. Well, the paternity test came back positive and everyone was shocked. And of course, they felt guilty for not having believed in me. Everyone apologized, and my husband even cried when he held our daughter in his arms for the first time. And I know that his apologies were genuine, and that's why I forgave him. But I don't know if I can forgive his family. They treated me really badly and said horrible things about me just a few days after giving birth, and I can't forget their insults or violence. My husband knows that I don't want to see his family, nor do I want them near any of our children, and he told his family so. These last 3 months it has been just the 5 of us, but it doesn't feel as good as I expected. My husband is constantly apologizing and crying every time he holds our daughter, and I am getting tired of this situation. I want us to be happy as we were before, so how can we move on? My husband suggested that we should start couples therapy. How much can therapy help? Update. I think before the update I should clarify a few things to put you in context. I know I should have said it in my original post, but I didn't, and that made many people believe so many things that are not true. Before I got pregnant, I met a man, I think he's in his early 50s, at work, and you could say that he's a little too friendly. For example, he liked to buy me and another female coworker, she's in her late 50s, coffee every morning, or once in a while he used to leave a flower on our desks and things like that. That never seemed strange to me because he never tried anything with any of us. He was always just friendly, and he was always talking about his wife, children, and grandchildren and giving us parenting advice. Well, my husband didn't like that I was friends with this man because he said that he was sure that this man liked me because I'm young and that he would soon try something with me. And when he told me that, I told him that I wouldn't stop being friends with him because he was always respectful and I didn't see anything wrong with being friends with a man. And I'm not gonna lie, he got really angry, but after a few days he forgot about it. But all those doubts resurfaced when our daughter was born because she had a lot of platinum blonde hair, which none of our other children, 5M, 4M, had. And my husband thought she would look like her brothers. But no, she looked completely different from him and me, and that made him doubt. My coworker is not blonde, but he has the same eye color as our daughter, and he's very pale, just like her. So my husband asked me for a paternity test, and I refused because it was humiliating and because I thought that at least he would educate himself about basic biology. But he didn't. And when I say this, I mean that my great-grandparents look exactly like my daughter, same color hair, eyes, and skin, and he always knew that but decided to ignore it to believe that I was cheating on him. And I know that I helped this situation escalate and end badly because I should have accepted the paternity test. And I say that because here it is not easy to do a paternity test without authorization from both parents. And regarding his sister and mother, they never liked me, and for a while we even stopped having contact with his family because I didn't like the way they treated me. But when our second son was born, I felt alone because it was just my husband, his friends, our son, and I. I wanted my children to grow up with a family, so we got back in touch with them. And in fact, they treated me very well until my daughter was born. And when they pulled my hair, my husband wasn't present, and I didn't tell him until a few weeks later. And by then, they had a big fight because of that. I swear that he was never violent, nor did he ever endorse anyone being violent with me. Well, the update is that I gave him an ultimatum and told him that I want to go live in my home country and be close to my family, and that if he didn't want that, then the only option would be getting divorced. When I told him that, I also told him that I'm talking to a lawyer to advise me on divorce and joint custody, and I guess that made him realize that I was being serious because he said he would be willing to do that to earn my forgiveness. Another thing I asked him is to cut off contact with his family forever, because I don't want our children to suffer what I suffered with them, and he agreed. At the moment, our plan is to travel for Christmas and stay there for a few weeks and move in the middle of next year. In the meantime, we will go to couples and individual therapy and hope to be able to solve our problems. So far, things are going well, and I hope they continue that way. Edit. I don't understand why there are so many people accusing me of being a terrible wife and not supporting my husband when he told me to stop talking to my coworker. I've supported him since we started dating. I moved to a different country as a teenager. I left behind my family, friends, and everything I ever knew, all for him. I didn't go to college until last year because he was doing his PhD and I had to stay home with the kids full-time, which is why I could never have a single friend here, because since I arrived here, my only duty was to be a mother and housewife, and that consumed all my time. I got my first job when I was 23, and it was only because the kids were old enough to go to kindergarten, so don't say I don't support him because that's the only thing I've been doing since we started dating. This was the first time I had friends here, even though they were both over 50, and it felt good because there were days where I felt so alone and talking to them at work made me feel good. But for him, that was wrong, and when my daughter was born, I quit my job that I liked so much just so that he would stop feeling insecure. So don't jump to conclusions or say stupid things. Additional info. People say OP downplayed the coworker stuff / more clarity. Well, maybe I did downplay his behavior, but it's my first job, and since he never behaved inappropriately, I thought it's something a lot of people do when they share an office with others. Also, all our coworkers speak highly of him. No one ever called him creepy or anything like that. I never gave flowers, but during the time I worked there and shared an office with this man and another woman, I used to bake cookies to share with them and things like that. I don't know if it's comparable, but what I mean is that in our office we used to exchange things, whether it was a coffee, a cookie, or a flower. One more response to the downvoted people who think she's going too far and cutting them off. His family rejected my daughter since she was born. They pulled my hair during a one-sided fight when I was holding my daughter. They mistreated me when I was pregnant with my first child. So why should he keep in touch with people who don't respect his wife or his daughter? Now on to the next story. Story 12. BFF tricked me into a blind date with a guy who's been obsessed with me for years after my husband passed away. He said, "Now that my husband's not a problem, he could raise my baby." Hello, everyone. I just really need some clarity on this situation. I, 23F, lost my husband, 25M, weeks ago to a car accident. He was the love of my life, and I'm still not used to waking up without him every day. We had big plans for our future, and it all came crashing down in a heartbeat. We met on his uncle's farm. He was a farmhand, and it was love at first sight for me. I'm also 4 months pregnant, but I haven't told anyone. I was planning on telling my friend when I was feeling better. My best friend, Lee 24F, has been my shoulder to cry on during this time. She helped me with his funeral and anything else I needed. As I'm in C with my bio family, story for another time. She is currently dating Barry, 24M, and they usually hang out in a trio with Liam, 24M. When I first met Liam, he hit on me hard. He tried everything, as in, would try and compare himself with my husband, say weird things like our kids would be cuter than if you had kids with my husband. He's also made weird comments like, I need a city boy, and would motion to himself when I'm a country girl through and through. I typically would shut him down or ignore him, but I would always get dirty looks from Barry. Fast forward to Sunday night, I got a message from Lee begging me to come to dinner with her because she wanted to treat me, as I had been through a lot in the last couple of weeks. Feeling not so great about myself, I decided to go. When I arrived, she wasn't there, so I texted her asking how long she would be, and she told me 5 minutes. She's just running late and is around the corner. So I sat down and ordered a drink. Now, 5 minutes comes and she's still not there, so I gave her the benefit of the doubt and waited another 5. When I'm about to call her, Liam comes rushing over and gives his apologies for being late. I asked him what he's doing here because I'm waiting for Lee and it was a 2-chair table. He smiles at me and grabs my hand. I ripped it off of him and he just says, "Oh, I asked Lee to set us up. Now that husband's name isn't a problem, we can finally get to know each other." He looked so cringy, and I'm telling you, I was floored. I stood up and told him that I wasn't interested and I certainly don't give a flying F about getting to know him and that I just lost my husband. Without a word of a lie, this man stands up and said, "I know you're being overly emotional right now, so we'll forgive you for that. Sit down with me. I'm not saying we have to have sex straight away or anything." I was disgusted. I shoved past him and went home as fast as I could. When I did get home, Lee messaged me, "How was dinner?" with a smirk emoji. I called her, and when she answered, I didn't let her get a word in and I yelled at her. I asked her how she has the audacity to do something like this weeks after I just lost my husband, when she's been the one to hold me together this whole time. I asked her what FING game was she playing, and that the only reason I wanted to meet tonight with her was to tell her I'm pregnant. I just hung up on her and texted her, "I need time and don't want to be contacted by her for the time being." Last night, Barry came to my house and asked to talk. I said no and that if he didn't leave, I'd call the police. He told me that I broke Lee's heart and that I deeply hurt Liam, when now is an even better time to get to know Liam because he could raise my child with me. I opened my door, which Barry took as I wanted to talk. Instead, I hit him with my shoes and chased him to his car screaming. I'm actually embarrassed I did that. All day today, I'm being flooded with messages from friends and the trio themselves shaming me for pushing the people who care about me the most away, and that they don't even recognize the person I've become. The only thing that hurts me most is that my husband would know what to do. He would tell me how to fix it, and now I have no one who I can talk to. I'm just so numb inside. I have a therapy appointment tomorrow, but I'm thinking of calling my husband's mom, even though we've barely spoken since the funeral. Any advice is appreciated. Please excuse any typos. I'm just so exhausted. Update on another post comments where OP has replied. Commenter 1. Very weird and inappropriate people you have as so-called friends. Go and see with them just till you call your mother-in-law. She'll be thrilled about the baby. That's your support system, and join a grief therapy group if there is one local to you. It's okay to be numb. It's normal to be numb when life cracks you upside the head. This is hard. OP, thank you. I just feel so wrecked at the minute, and I have joined a grief group in the city. I'm trying to grip enough courage to actually go. OP on the friends thinking she needs to get over her husband's death. They think I should go out with Liam to get over my husband. I personally am in no way to be jumping into a relationship, let alone having a new family. Thank you for your advice. Commenter 2. These 3 are absolutely FING humans. Did they absolutely hate your late husband or something? Lose the 3 of them. I can't even comprehend the audacity that would make them think any of their behaviors were appropriate. OP. Lee used to have a crush on my husband. She knew him because her brother used to play football with my husband. Other than that, Barry and Liam hated him because they think people from the country are stuck-up rednecks. Thank you for your comment. Commenter 3. Are you uber rich or very, very attractive? Because I can't understand why these people are pushing so hard to see you with a man again. P. Lee is the kind of woman who can't be single. I hope that explains her point of view. Update October 30th, 2024. Hello all and thank you. I just wanted to start out with I called my MIL. Louise, after making the post. I thought that I needed to tell her about baby because just like some of you said, she is overjoyed about the news. She didn't answer my call but instead drove straight over to my house. I honestly didn't know what to say to her, but we just hugged and cried all night. I didn't have the best delivery about how I am pregnant, probably due to all the crying, but she just lit up and was so happy. It's the first time I've seen her be this happy in all the time I've known her, so at least I have some support. My FIL came over when he finished work after ML told him he needed to come to my house, and he was too overjoyed about becoming a pop. Louise offered to have the baby and I move in, and I agreed. She said that I can sleep in my husband's old room, which was a little bittersweet. When I told her what was going on with Liam, and Barry, she was furious and told me not to worry about it, because they, MAL and FIL, have my back. After a lot of even more crying, FIL told me that my husband would be so happy to have this baby grow up on a farm like my husband did. Overall, our conversation last night was something I needed. Now I'm just going to answer some comments. 1. No, this isn't fake, and if you choose to believe that then that's fine, but don't be dragging my husband when you don't even know him. Liam didn't kill my husband, it was a car accident and my husband died on impact. Nothing crazy went on, it's just awful but is as simple as that. 2. Lee was my friend for a long time. She was genuinely there for me when I went NC with my parents, and I thought she was a decent friend. Now, knowing the truth, there are many things I can think of that she did that are red flags. Personally, I think I ignored them because I have never been close to anyone like that other than my husband. 3. Liam is a loser, and from my chat with Barry, I learned that he's always had feelings for me and he's never given up because apparently, he's my type. He isn't and never will be. 4. Yes, I ordered a drink. I didn't think I needed to disclose that I ordered a lemonade. It was simply a soda, nothing wild. I know I'm pregnant and I'd never do anything silly. 5. I'm not magically pregnant. My husband and I both wanted children young and were trying for about a year. We just didn't disclose that we were trying because my husband and I think it's weird telling people, though we're having sex an extra amount. I don't know. But my husband and I are very private people and kept a lot of it that way. And as for the trio, I've blocked them. None of my family are reaching out because they simply don't know me anymore. The only friends who are reaching out are mutuals of either Lee, Barry, and one of Liam's other friends. I was confused on if I was an a-hole because I just left Liam standing there and yelled at Lee. I was so upset, I was confused on the entire thing. But thank you all and I will update on what happens because I know Liam will not give up until he's in jail. I seriously hope it doesn't come to that, but the fact he drove past my house twice is uneasy. So I'm hopeful the move to husband's parents' farm will have my baby and myself on a better path. We have reached the end. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and give us your thoughts about the stories in the comments section. Thank you and see you in the next video.